to maximize the time for anybody in the audience to make a comment, raise a question, we're going to not break and move right into public comments. And so there is a roving microphone. Somebody who has the mic? Can I see who has the microphone? Okay. Can you? So people don't have to crawl over each other. I can't hear you. Yeah. And if you would keep your comments brief, I would be very appreciative, because if you don't, I'm afraid I have to make time for others. So
he's going to keep the timer. What'd you say? Oh, you mean to move it up?
Okay. Just give us one moment, please.
So are they setting a finite time for each?
Yeah, I think they are.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard.
What is it, 2 minutes? 1.5 minutes, okay. We've been keeping all of our speakers to time, too, and that's the apparatus.
Quite a line.
Pardon?
If I can clarify, we had a number of people who asked to speak, and we had a public sign-in at the front table as we communicated throughout the past few weeks with people who asked to speak. Consequently, to all of you wonderful people in line, I am sorry to say I'm going to go in order of this list. So everybody could actually just sit down, please, and I will call the list, and I will bring this to you, okay? Thank you so much.
Sometimes 20 people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go.
Please, Val, start. And I'd ask each person after Val calls you and you come up, if you could just introduce yourself to us, we would be very appreciative of that. Thank you.
Wonderful. So the first person I have is Michael S. Perfect. Thank you so much.
My name is Michael Shaneyfeld. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. The question that I brought to the board is that in 2000 I was approached by an ex-Navy sub-diver, and he brought to my attention the use of an auditory weapon that he stole from the United States Navy. Yeah. He told me about this weapon that he stole from the Navy. And he told me how the weapon would affect the central nervous system of a human. And he wanted me to go out and assist him in certain things. And in 2006, my life changed. I woke up one night and I got a strong electrical shock in the center of my chest. From that, I started to have problems with my heart. I started having Jiminies, irregular rhythms. Went in and to the hospital. The doctors determined that I was getting electrical shock through my chest. Then I went in and had an operation done, ablation. And all this just keeps going on. From then, it went to my lungs. Then from there, it went to my kidneys. From there, it went to my bladder. From there, it went to my colon. And it keeps going on and on and on. Medically, I've been looked at and reviewed over and over and over again. My brother, he's a doctor. My sister, she's a nurse. My nephew's a nurse. And I've got people that have talked to me about medical situations and medical views. And I know exactly what's occurring is wrong, and I feel like I'm a test subject. And I've responded to the government, and the government responded back to me. But I have not seen no action. I've given y'all a report, and y'all can look at the letters that I've sent in.
Gerald Schatz. Thank you. My name is Gerald Schatz, and I'm a lawyer and retired assistant professor of ethics and law at Michigan State University. I want to address two things very quickly. One is the theme of vulnerability and its recognition. We have gone from an era of very reflective and I think very decent recognition of the moral obligations of researchers to an era of discussion of regulatory burden. I think that's unseemly. The second point is that there is law out there. The bioethics community has been oblivious to it, but there is international law. There is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the United States ratified in 1992, and it makes informed consent an absolute requirement, no exceptions, not even in emergencies, subject to those normal legal fictions of consenting for the incapacitated patient to medical care and so forth. Additionally, the Geneva Conventions and additional protocols to the Geneva Conventions make research very, very difficult or prohibited altogether for those individuals who are caught up in war and armed conflicts. Michigan State University faculty responded to the OHARP request for comment in 2005 on equivalent protections. I will be pleased to provide that comment and those citations and some additional materials to the Commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sina Ryan.
Thank you very much. My name is Sina Ryan. I am an Iranian American, been living here since 1976. To answer the question to the chair lady that if it's still going to happen or it's still going on, I will assure you that it's still experimentation going on, and one of live standing right here. I strongly believe that I have been targeted for the experimentation of a brain research since September 2008. Without my consent, they are controlling my mind and using electronic remote control device to send instruction. In the past 2.5 years, I have been subjected to constant electric shock, a sleep disturbance, a sleep deprivation, short but severe localized pain in my into various parts of my body, telephone and bell rings in my ears, heat waves through my body, horrifying dreams, creating sudden fear and worries in my mind. They do these mostly when I am inside my apartment, but sometimes some of this happens when I'm outside without I'm seeing anybody or any device. These experimentations are done to me without any touch or anything, see anybody. This inhuman and painful method of torture include reading my thoughts and memories. Through this, they have been able to control me and subject me to severe pain that I have been suffering for the past 29 months. My health has deteriorated during this time, and I have no medical insurance to seek medical help. My life is in danger, and I need your help from the government. I am only asking them to stop this painful torture and leave me alone so I can go back to my life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. John Hall.
My name is Dr. John Hall. I'm a medical doctor from Texas. As I understand the memorandum from the President, it's for you to determine if current legislation is adequate in protecting individuals and if there's any ongoing experimentation. In reviewing the common rule, it's very obvious that there's a lot of loopholes to informed consent. All of the horrific experiments you've mentioned, Willowbrook, MKUltra, radiation experiments, mostly were done without informed consent. They were funded by the DoD and intelligence agencies where I'm not even so sure you would know if there's an IRB, much less if an IRB is looking at informed consent. As a physician, relative to some of what you're hearing today, in the community, we are seeing an alarming rate of complaints of use of electromagnetic weapons, microwave auditory effects, silent sound spectrum, EEG cloning, which has taken the lab out of the laboratory and into the home. Most of these, from the research that we reviewed, can be done remotely. It seems to be more weapons research than medical research. I personally corresponded with upwards of 1,500 victims, all complaining of identical complaints from every state in the nation of being exposed to electromagnetic radiation, non-ionizing radiation for the use of cognitive control or behavior control. I've submitted a paper to you, and there's another paper submitted to each member from another physician in Kansas City, alluding to the same thing.
Thank you.
Mrs. Hall?
I would like to refer my time back to Dr. Hall. Can I?
Okay. Mr. No, it's okay. Mr. Millicent Black. Oh, madam.
My name is Millicent Black. I'm from Tennessee, possibly a transgenerational person whose family members have been used for at least 3 generations, and I'm the second one. My dad possibly was the first one who was admitted to a Nashville hospital with a pineal gland tumor, left there with a plate in the back of his head, not the front of his head, where his pineal gland would have been. At his death, before his death, I sought legal counsel for some horrendous treatment he had received at a nursing home that was also partnering with that hospital in Nashville, only to find out that a judge told the attorneys to drop that case. I am a part of the group that's here today representing those who are receiving the electromagnetic torture, and even my daughter at 5 months old was referred to that same Nashville hospital after having been refused treatment at the local hospital. I believe she is also a victim of the electromagnetic torture. Where does it stop? When are we given our rights as humans and as citizens? Does being African Americans qualify as non-black or non-white and non-American citizens or non-American people? We seem to have a double bind going.
Thank you.
Mr. Marshall? Or Mrs. Marshall?
Good afternoon. My name is Connie Marshall. I'm a former mayoral candidate from Louisville, Kentucky. I have never been involved in any criminal activity. I found a document in my bank account that said, problem with Kentucky government, check federal government paperwork and file before releasing information to anyone. I am an 8-year victim survivor of assaults by directed energy weapons. The torture I've experienced consists of body overheating, body extremely cold, seizures, heart pain, earaches, itching behind eyes, burning behind eyes, swelling, headaches, involuntary movement of my limbs, exhaustion, speeding and heart racing, hair coming out by the handfuls as if I've had chemotherapy, mind paralysis, being hypnotized or placed in a trance-type state, being tracked by a drone or satellite, controlled dreams, sleep deprivation, V2K, which is voice to skull, projected sound, extreme muscle spasms, and extreme muscle cramps, being made to fall down, blue circles around the pupils of my eyes, and I'm here and you can look at them if you like, low-frequency noises in my home, high-frequency noises in my home, sexual stimulation. Numerous electrical appliances in my home are destroyed. 4 computers, 2 fax machines, 7 telephones, 4 CD players, VCR, DVD players, electrical igniter switch on my furnace, washer and dryer, air conditioner. Also, my car radio, CD player, and engine were destroyed. I am watched in my home 24 hours a day and followed around everywhere I go, though I do not have a criminal history. When I ran for mayor of my town, I was also attacked at debates and forums. My website is www.justiceforallcitizens.com. Thank you. And I would like to leave these flyers with you all as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Alan Hornsblum.
My name's Alan Hornblum. I'm a Philadelphia-based author who has written books on things running the gamut from organized crime to Soviet espionage. But for the purposes of this meeting, I've written 2 books on the history of using prison inmates as test subjects. You may be familiar with one or both of them. I'm working with a couple colleagues now on the history of using institutionalized children as test subjects for research, and I can assure you some of the material I'm finding is quite astounding, including the fact that Nobel Prize winners went to institutions for the feeble-minded to use them as test subjects. And in interviewing people over the years, not just test subjects, which I do on a regular basis, but also the doctors who initiated these experiments, these clinical trials, I'm talking about people like Konstantin Melektos and Albert Kligman and Hillary Kroprowski, Chester Southam, some of the top researchers of the 20th century. Most of them are famous and some are infamous. It's remarkable that almost all of them articulate how little medical ethics was taught in medical schools at the time. And I had to bring up, I had to educate one of them, in fact, about the Nuremberg Code. When I mentioned it, he wasn't even familiar with it. These problems with regard to medical ethics are still there. I periodically give talks at universities and med schools, and it's stunning to me that when I go into a bookstore at the university and go in, maybe I'll see one of my books there. Of course, I'm a little bit disturbed when they don't, but I also don't see anything by Harriet Washington or by James Jones, Bad Blood, or by Jonathan Moreno's book. Medical ethics is an orphan in today's medical arena. It is out there in left field. They really de-emphasize it, and that's part of the continuing problem that doctors, as Dan said earlier, when they do these studies, it's a cost-benefit analysis, and there's much more benefit to doing research, even when it breaks rules and laws and cuts corners, than by following the rules. And that's why I believe the Commission has to make a very strong condemnation of Dr. Cutler and the institutions and doctors that he worked with, not just with regard to Tuskegee and Guatemala, but there are so many other incidents and events out there. As Susan said, we will continue to discover these. There will be another commission like yours in 10 years going over what you didn't look at or what you didn't do. So I would encourage you to be as aggressive as possible, not just describe what happened, but really condemn those who broke the law, because there's doctors making decisions right now, and those decisions are going the wrong way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Deborah Poulsen or Deborah Paulson.
Hi, I'm Deborah Paulson from Kenosha, Wisconsin. I'm going to refer to a paper from Professor McCoy at the University of Wisconsin on no-touch torture. He talks about a total assault on all senses and sensibilities: auditory, visual, tactile, temporal, temperature, and survival, refined through years of practice. Sensory disorientation relies on a mix of sensory overload and sensory deprivation via banal procedures, then intense interrogation, heat and cold, light and dark, noise and silence, for a systematic attack on all human stimuli. I've been a human subject for experimentation for almost 2 years, and I've contacted Dr. Hall. I stand with a very large group. Excuse me, I'm very nervous, but I'm very tired of having my rights taken away. And thank you for hearing me, and thank you for the others. I would like some help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Lisa Becker.
Sorry. Pardon me.
Thank you. My name is Lisa Becker. I am also from Wisconsin. I have been a non-consenting test subject in military medical research. I, too, believe my experience is referred to as no-touch torture, utilizing defense technologies. Jonathan Moreno, he basically predicted all this a number of years ago in his book do risk. I'm asking you to help initiate a congressional investigation. We've all come a long way. This is what is needed. We want to have the accounts of this extreme human rights abuse that's going on in our country documented and heard, all of the accounts. We also need what was done during the Clinton administration, which is a major declassification of some of these documents that are hiding what's been going on. I speak for many when I say we've suffered long enough. My personal experience has been 10 years. I've been vilified. I've been ostracized. I've been tortured. I have burns on my body. I'm an American. I have rights. The answer to the question, the big question today, could it happen today? The answer is yes, it is happening today. It is happening for some of us every day. I am begging for you to help us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. James Walbert.
My name is James Walbert. To date, I have one of the strongest cases documented of these unethical violations against our society. Due to the facts of having the kinds of professionals that I have involved with this case, I have been able to prove that this crime against others and myself is real and shows reason to be concerned with. I am in hopes that I am able to prove the same thing to this committee. And by the introduction of the evidence that I have to introduce to the committee, I and the professionals that are standing with myself in this crime would like for this committee to consider the introduction of these documents with the growing concern of this crime to the President for his review. With these hopes in mind for this consideration, I would also like to ask of this committee to consider an investigation into these unethical violations of others and myself that are affected by this crime. With this consideration of this investigation request into these matters, I would also like to point out the abuses of children that have been documented by the many professionals that I am currently working with into these matters of this crime. To date, the professionals have been documenting these offenses against the children that are related to the many victims of these crimes. They have proven this concern to be valid, as I am pointing out to this committee, the growing concern of fellow states that have now passed laws against forced chipping of an RFID tracking chip. These states that have now passed such bills into law: Colorado House Bill 071082, North Dakota Senate Bill 2415, Oklahoma State Senate Bill 47, House Bill 072092, Missouri House Bill 550, Pennsylvania Bill, Georgia Senate Bill 235, and the list just goes on. I was also wanting to ask if I could provide a portfolio of introduction of 12 professionals from political support to medical investigations, as well as private investigative support to the committee as well for review.
May, thank you very much.
Thank you. Right on.
Mr. Peter Rosen.
Hi, I'm Peter Rosenholm. I'm from Rhode Island. Like all the others, we go through this every day. I'm at least 14 years now of being tortured. It's non-consensual human experimentation. It's remote. It's covert. It's hard to prove it a lot of times. Many of my attacks were microwave weapons. Medusa is one. In all the hospital statements when I was hospitalized, I told of being hit by radiation weapons, that I could hear voices. Medusa now admits to all those capabilities. I'm also in the Naval War College's Congressional District, and I've got falsely diagnosed, drugged. I pretty much proven all that wrong. I'm off all the medication, but I'm still tortured. It goes on every day, and it goes on every day for all these people. What I would like is for us to have a participation on your committee, for someone from our group to actually participate. I'm wondering if that's possible. Because we're the victims. We're like the Guatemalans who are tortured. Is there a chance that that can happen? Did you hear me? Is there a chance that a group or an individual from us can be on the committee?
We're constituted by the President as a commission and have we have public comment, and you can write us, and we will read everything you give us.
Right.
It's the President Obama appoints the commission.
The other thing we deal with is like a COINTELPRO attack. Law enforcement attacks us, discredits us, will put us in a mental hospital if we try too hard. These people all don't want to go to doctors. The Patriot Act has provisions where doctors have to follow what they say. So a lot of these people aren't getting their teeth fixed, aren't going for medical care. We're in a bad situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kenneth Rhodes, or Rons? Mr. Kenneth Rhodes. Ms. Letitia Peters.
Madam Chair, members of the Bioethics Committee.
Yes,
members
thank
of the
you.
Bioethics Committee. My name is Letitia Peters. I'm from Trenton, New Jersey. I was a federal government employee working 16 years as an electronics engineer right here in Washington, D.C., where I got sick due to toxic mold exposure. And when I started complaining about it and using my rights, I believe now, after 5 years of being out of the government, after 16 years of service, that I was put into this 24/7 execution chamber. And I, too, am looking for congressional investigations. I should be covered under the Whistle Protection Blowers Act. And I, too, would like to submit documentation, which I presented. And I have been denied medical treatment. I have been disregarded as being non-human. All my rights have been violated. My parents and I are living together now in Trenton, New Jersey, and there are low-flying aircrafts dropping biological weapons over our houses every day in order to try to kill me. And I just want to demonstrate some of the evidence that I have and provide to you, because I've been trying to get to the president, but I know all of my information has been rerouted. So I, too, am requesting a congressional investigation as well. And may I present this information to you?
May. Thank you very much.
Ms. Tammy Battaglia.
Hi, my name's Tammy Battaglia. I've been enrolled in psychological experiments on the record since the age of 13 without my consent. I've spent many years recovering from experimental hypnosis, physical and biological testing that I've undergone during decades of tests conducted by government-funded doctors, corporate think tanks, and researchers. I've experienced tremendous loss and trauma over the years of subjection to non-consensual experimentation, which has been devastating to my life. The people conducting experiments on other human beings do not consider the horribly destructive ramifications that they're subjecting victims to. As a result, there is no rehabilitation after experiments. No consideration is given to the often severe psychological and physical trauma suffered by non-consensual test subjects almost continuously. Many victims, such as myself, are diagnosed with non-existent mental illnesses, and as a result, we are expected to take dangerous medications that we do not need. There's no way to seek justice for what we've endured, because in America, the land of the free, justice is not free. The experiments violate every right imaginable and offer no restitution whatsoever. If myself or any other victim approaches law enforcement or government agencies, we're spurned and in some cases forcibly taken to mental institutions. I've not consented to be experimented on by any branch of the government, military, or members of the American Medical Association. The initial experiments unfolded from decisions that were made for me when I was a child, at a time when I was unable to understand what I was being volunteered for or what the consequences would be. I deserve to be vindicated and released from these experiments immediately, as do all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Rose Gopinski.
Amy, I love your question of us to try to figure out what the big problem is.
to really analyze and get to the root of it. And I thought at first it was containment, which leads to things like false flags to confuse people. It leads to harassing people to discredit them, disable them, the TIs, that is, the victims. It leads to possible corruption, the secrecy, possible fear of going to prison on the people that are, on the part of the people that are executing these things. And then I realized underneath the containment, the secrecy dash containment umbrella, is a really glaring inability of the U.S. to ever apologize for anything. To be able to just say, I'm sorry. The rest of the world is waiting for us to say, I'm sorry, or I admit to something. I have flaws. Everyone does. And when it, contrary to the Pentagon myth that you should not do that to be strong, contrary to that myth, it makes a person stronger. Therefore, it will also make a country stronger. Other countries would very much appreciate it. Say, I'm sorry, 2 seconds of silence, and then we can go on with life.
Thank you.
Mr. Jeremy Radlar.
My name is Jeremy Radlow. I'm here to tell you that non-consensual human experimentation is happening in the United States today. I've been the subject of this experimentation for more than 5 years. Calling these activities experimentation is truthful but possibly distracting. I think the criteria governing the selection of experimentees will prove to be a much bigger scandal than the experimentation itself. The psychological torture protocol that's part of the so-called experimentation includes, but is not limited to, the use of non-lethal weapons and mind-invasive technology. Sleep deprivation, pain center stimulation, and worse are used against subjects. While some experimentees have found foreign objects in their bodies suggesting implantation, most have not. Receiverless mind-invasive technology has been demonstrated under laboratory conditions, but the most likely explanation is that experimentees are implanted with foreign objects either too small to appear on commercially available scanning equipment or designed to be indistinguishable from the surrounding tissue. These activities are highly deceptive, use clandestine technology, and have the fingerprints of the CIA all over them. It's unreasonable to expect isolated individuals receiving this treatment to furnish proof. A thorough investigation is warranted. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Catherine Nestor.
My name is Catherine Nestor, and I'm from Pennsylvania. This commission has spoken of a long history of abuse of the human research subject. Although no one mentioned MKUltra today, President Clinton recently apologized for this. My young child and I have been used as non-consensual test subjects. We have been subjected to COINTELPRO-like stalking, remote neural monitoring, and electromagnetic torture, resulting in psychological and physical damage. And I won't go into the details of that because I have 4 pages written in here that is very similar to Connie's testimony. Please do not wait 70 years to investigate this. I ask Dr. Amy Gutman to begin today. There is new work for the Commission for Human Subject Protection on our shores. And please give us a dramatic response, Susan, and please give us a congressional hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Miriam Snyder.
Hello, my name is Miriam Snyder. I'm an educator, minister, human rights advocate. I work with many people that have suffered the ramifications of unregulated, deadly human research experimentation. Since I've brought this to the public, I've become a victim too. In fact, in the past I was. I have 3 questions I would like the commission to answer, and then I'd like to submit some recommendations so that we do not have to go through this type of forum of listening, and then we have to rush this serious assassination program. Human research experimentation is being used to assassinate innocent people, and I think it's time that it takes much more than 2 minutes to rush up. I resent it. I spent my time, I listened, and I asked that you listen. Foremost, since Guatemala and Tuskegee experiments, it is understood that human research experimentation via particularly injections on innocent people is understood that these things are going on. I would like the commission to address what is being done to stop the continuance of non-verifiable injections being used on people. I'd like to know the commission to address what penalties and protections are in place for researchers, the incarceration of researchers who create deadly weapons and viruses. What is going to be done to stop the deadly created man-made viruses getting out the laboratory to human bodies? And when are we going to start incarcerating researchers? All right? Number 3, who supervises energy technology? Specifically, electronic torture. That is a major issue. Just hold on. I waited 2 days. Electronic torture. All of these people are here talking about they are being tortured. They are in a slow kill program via radiation. The cleft lip babies are coming out through radiation programs. The studies show it. I've submitted documentation. We have cleft lip babies because of unregulated radiation studies. What is going to be done to stop this? These people are suffering because of unregulated radiation studies, human research experiments, and the funding is immense, and people are dying. What's going to be done to stop it? Okay. With respect to neuroimaging, I found a tremendous amount of research regarding injection-induced seizures. Why is human research allowing experiments that allow injection-induced seizures? And through electronic technology. Now, what my recommendation? I would hope that this committee could launch a specific committee to address these issues with human rights experts, genocide specialists, people who have studied mass murders, that it's understood that these things do happen, okay, through genocide, and I can give you a list of people that have documentaries on this, and to investigate the citizen complaints regarding mind control weapons, in particular energy technology via satellite, induced seizure via satellite, microwave auditory effect weapon, all government-sponsored psychological operations, microchipping through injections. Above all, we seek the creation of a means for injections to be verified before entering the human body, and prosecution for anyone using these deadly tactics to harm the people. And we seek compensation for all the victims who have filed affidavits after affidavit documenting the atrocities involved with unregulated and deadly human research experimentation that they have suffered as a direct result of these criminal human research and the people, the whistleblowers who have exposed this. Thank you very much. And please have a forum where we don't have to do this rush up. I waited 2 days, and I don't like being rushed like this. I really don't.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Nigel Nicholson.
Hi, good evening. My name is Nigel Nicholson, and I have been in a psychological coercive mind control program. This started in 2002, where I was falsely arrested, I was drugged, and I believe I was hypnotized. Soon after that, I was being harassed by the police department, along with noise campaign that was being committed by the New York City Fire Department. I mean, for a whole year, every time I left my house, I was bombarded with noise, which led me to have a psychological breakdown. I've been job mobbed. I've been put into what I call a assassination type program. Okay? I've been villainized. My friends has totally retreated from me, even though I've continuously reached out to them. Okay? I have been under what I believe is neuro monitoring. When I can think of something and go outside and somebody will walk by me and repeat what I just said, I know I'm not crazy. Okay, regardless of what is being said, they make the victims of these programs to be diagnosed with a psychological illness to hide these crimes, because we all know that to discredit an individual, if you give them a mental illness or diagnose them with a mental illness, no one is going to believe us. No one is going to believe you or I. And this is how they are hiding these crimes.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Micheline Jones. Micheline.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Micheline Jones. I'm right here from D.C. I live in public housing, and I mention that because this is where most of the poor people are at, especially these days with the way the economy is going. I am the subject of MK Ultra, mind control. I am also the subject of electromagnetic radiation, and I have many videos to prove it. I've taken these videos to newspapers and to various places, even including, CDC, and everyone has just turned away as if this is hush-hush. I've had lawyers deny me assistance because they said this is too big. So in research, I found out that the former Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney asked for a reinvestigation under her resolution HR 1026 to reinvestigate COINTEL activities. I am constantly stalked. There's many covert activities that have followed me. Sleep deprivation, I don't have that too much now because I force myself, clocks, radios, too much liquids at nights, whatever, just to get up and get out the house. I've asked public housing from the executive director all the way down to fair hearing, which is still pending right now, to get me out of this place. But now I'm beginning to wonder, would it do any good? I've relocated 3 or 4 times, and I had a deputy officer or county officer tell me this will follow you. So when they pick their subjects, this goes with you. I would like all of this medical abuse to be investigated, and if possible for you to get back with us. I didn't know about this meeting until yesterday, and I do appreciate your letting me have this time to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
Mr. Timothy White.
I'd like to thank the Commission for allowing the public to address these issues. And it's been a lot of information, and it's been very good and enlightening. And I see I'm in the right place to provide the information I have. And yes, the Tuskegee experiments are still going on, and the Guatemala experiments are still going on. But they're going on because of the advances in the signals technology and in cognitive neurological technology and neurophysiological experimentation and research. And advances in that technology is allowing these things to happen and creating a new class of vulnerabilities for citizens who cannot protect themselves against this. Okay, we provide citizens who are currently non-consensual victims of cognitive neuroscience and neurophysiological research and experimentation, which is enabled remotely through extreme low-frequency computer-to-brain entrainment technology. This technology exists and can be verified on subjects with a high degree of accuracy using current neural imaging technologies. Okay, this is an atrocity that has gone on for years, and like the Tuskegee experiments, it's clearly within the scope of this commission. Okay, the validity of this, if there's any doubt as to the validity of these claims, that this commission can conduct its own independent investigation by using functional brain imaging techniques. Okay, we ask that the committee, just because of the existence of our organization, Freedom for Covert Harassment and Surveillance alone, we have thousands of people who have contacted us claiming to be victims of this. The justification for our existence is justification that you should investigate this occurrence further, okay? We need tests to determine if a citizen has been harmed by a cognitive weapon. These are cognitive weapons that somehow these people are being experimented on with. And just overall, we need to ban the unethical use of science and technology on all citizens for any form, for any reason, and in any form. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a minute. We have about 5 minutes left. So,
okay. Well, I'll take 5 minutes.
No, but if there's somebody else, okay. Thank you.
I'll try.
Absolutely. Thank you.
As you see, we have actually this is a minority of us. Approximately, let's say, I've spoken to probably 3,000 people. He's on probably 1,500. He's on 5,000. There's a lot of us across the U.S. And there's certain statistics, I think, that if you find that there is something going on wrong, that you're going on wrong, that somewhere along the line somebody has to do an investigation. There's a certain percentage of illness. You do an investigation. If there's a certain amount of cancers in an area, same as Brockovich went and did the investigation, she found a certain amount. Well, we're presenting our case right now. You said you guys wanted to be in the know. We're giving you the information now so that you are in the know. There is something going on. It's electromagnetically issue, and it has to do with from cell phones all the way to directed energy. And I think yesterday some of the colleagues went ahead and said that we didn't really talk about whether there's energy weapons or not, but I mean, we have thousands and thousands of documentations about energy weapons themselves. And all we're asking for is an investigation on this. People are being harmed, people are being tortured, and people are being killed. And I think it's a pretty important thing for a bioethic committee to look into. And all we ask today is to please do that. And Mark, on March 1st, 2011, we came to you and we told you. And I don't know how many more people. My friends are dead, tortured to death by electronic weapons. And I don't know how many more people will die. And I hope I will be here again if you have this next year.
Thank you very much.
That's the end of the list.
Are we?
That's the end of the list.
Okay. One minute. Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to do the best that I can while being hurt by a national defense weapon that our country built. I love our country, but I am in contact and have been with the chief of the Department of Defense Fraud, Waste, and Abuse hotline. He's worked with me and my wife for 2 years, and he went to the Pentagon after we were aerosoled by a jet at 150 to 200 miles an hour, that being me and my wife. That's why my face is rebuilt, and she's at home taking care of 100 head of cattle with a brain tumor. I've had 3 removed. I guess my point would be this, is that I stood up to this program, and that would be the Joint Operations System that our country built with the non-lethal and less than lethal weapons system. And I'm the only one known in the world, besides the people that helped build this system, to have this actual pulse on camera and have caught it. And I would like to submit that disc, but I guess the one question I would have, it's okay, Eli, you don't have to beat me up for the microphone. The one question I would have is, first of all, I would like to submit this to you as promptly as possible, and then ask each and every one of you that 90% of the people that approached you spoke the same way I am, scared, but also spoke. They're speaking of directed energy weapons. That was phased out with the non-lethal and less than lethal programs, and we all know that. Most of you do anyways. Would you please help save my life? Ma'am?
Please submit what you have, and we will do what we can.
And your name?
My name?
Yes, ma'am.
Is Dr. Amy Goodman.
Dr. Amy Goodman? I'm going to submit that to you. And if I
Please.
die from this, then I'm quite sure somebody else will look at the evidence. Thank you for your time, panel.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
She may still be. I think, in order that we maximize the time we have available, I think we ought to get going. This is the public comment session. You know, a couple of process issues. First of all, to remind folks that the commission staff published an invitation prior to this meeting in the Federal Register inviting comment. I understand there was something on the order of 300 people who wish to offer comment. We'll obviously not get 300 in the next 45 minutes, but the plan is to ask, in fact, I think responders, or rather public commenters, have been notified, and the plan is that Mr. Juan Chuck back here will be, has the list of folks that will be offering comment, and maybe the thing to do is to just dive into that. I want to remind you before we do that the commission, of course, is charged by President Obama to be looking at bioethical issues generated by novel and emerging research in biomedicine and related areas of science and technology, and to promote policies and practices that assure ethical responsibility. And remind you that the specific charge on this meeting has been around looking at on the topic of federal standards regarding human subjects research. So with that background and the amount of, each person I believe has a minute and a half is the way we've been able to try to cram in as many comments as possible. So, Juan, if you're ready for the first.
Ms. Cassandra Lewis.
Hi, Ms. Lewis.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Cassandra Lewis, and I'm a targeted individual from Baltimore, Maryland. My story may sound disjointed. I'm trying to keep it within the minute and a half. I worked as a legal secretary at Hogan & Hartson in Washington, D.C. It is now called Hogan Lovells. Attorney Jan McDavid made a client mistake that she tried to blame on me. I then refused to work for Ms. McDavid. Shortly thereafter, strange and inexplicable events occurred on my job, and after being fired, followed me to my home and to all my travels. Attorney Christopher J. Hagan, formerly of Hogan & Hartson, Mr. Samuel Conrad, he's a retired security administrator of Hogan & Hartson, and Robert Johnston, who is the current firm administrator of Hogan Lovells, are responsible for my targeting. I believe to protect Ms. McDavid's reputation, a phone call was made. To whom and why they did this to me, I truly just speculate. Gang stalking and harassment was used to implement this non-consensual biotechnology application that is being used on me. I now experience involuntary limb movements. I receive stingings. I get pains to my head, to my abdomen, to my vaginal area, and to my anal area. I am receiving from a language that I read concerning this technology. It is called Medusa, developed by the Navy, is being used on me. I get burning on my lower legs and my ankles. I get ringing in my ears that's pitched. It's like they pitch it. I get pulsing sensations in my body. I get an electrical current, an electrical sensation that goes up and down through my body and can be isolated to different parts of my body. I get severe tingling on the soles of my feet. I'm almost done. It's almost like being electrocuted, and the first time I experienced this was walking into a bank. I get buzzing sensations on the soles of my feet and individual toes. I also get facial manipulations, just to name a few of the things that happen to me. I feel as though I am being roboticized. These are very strange occurrences, and I would like for all the targeted individuals in this room to stand up and to show yourself. My story is similar to a lot of these people.
Mr. Eric Suba.
Thank you. I'm a physician, and cervical cancer prevention in developing countries is my life's work. I previously outlined my concerns in written form to Valerie Bonham and to Adam Michaels. My concerns are regarding ongoing studies of cervical cancer prevention currently being conducted in India. These studies include scientifically gratuitous control groups of unscreened women, and it includes scientifically gratuitous measurements of cervical cancer death rates among over 100,000 Indian women who are not being provided with any cervical cancer prevention services at all. These studies have been funded continuously since 1997 by the NCI and by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I'd like to offer a testable hypothesis that if these studies had been reviewed by any one of this afternoon's panelists, they'd be found, without exception, to be unethical by each of the panelists. I'd also like to offer the testable hypothesis to the Commission that these ongoing Indian studies could serve as a valuable prism through which to identify improvement opportunities for human subjects' protections. And finally, I'd like to offer my own technical consultative services to the Commission, as well as those of my colleagues in Vietnam and other developing countries, if the Commission should find a more grassroots perspective to be valuable. Thank you.
Mr. Thomas McClelland.
I'm 59 years old from New York City. I've been a victim of ongoing non-consensual human subject experimentation for my entire adult life, and possibly may have been a victim since my childhood. I have been targeted with ongoing microwave weapons as well as drugging with neurotoxic contaminants covertly placed on articles of clothing as well as on other personal possessions. I believe my being a non-consensual human test subject is related to the CIA's MK-Ultra behavior modification program that began in the 1950s. Moreover, after I read a July 1963 CIA MK-Ultra report that became unclassified in 1994 and emphasized that it would be necessary to test unwitting citizens in their ordinary day-to-day activities without their knowledge in the final stage of the testing program, I believe that I could be one of those many thousands of civilians that were unwittingly tested in the CIA's behavior modification program. Getting the government to take action concerning acknowledgement and putting an end to unethical consensual human experimentation that has also been a part of our country's past history is of great concern to me. I believe that there could have been other members of my family that were victims also. And please.
Thank you for your courage.
Mr. Brian Wrong. Miss Anya Briggs.
My name is Anya Briggs, and I am a private citizen and resident of New York City. I have been and continue to be experimented on against my will and without my permission as a human test subject and as a targeted individual forced into trauma-based mind control programs. Because of this ongoing experimentation, torture, and abuse since 2008 and before, I have endured the following physical and psychological symptoms: extreme, debilitating, and chronic fatigue, weakness, and dizziness for days and weeks at a time, lack of motor control, as well as the sensation of being physically controlled by an unseen force. My left arm occasionally experiences pain and discomfort from an object of unknown origin moving under my skin and being activated somehow. I have an unusual dental filling of unknown origin on the side of one of my back upper right teeth and no memory of having this procedure done. And I have x-ray printouts and a signed affidavit from my dentist stating this. Said dental filling causes me sharp pain, discomfort, and sensitivity. I have experienced extreme itching, burning, and pain in my right leg that turned into an intense bright pink and then disappeared completely after several minutes, and I have photographs of this happening in real time. I have had a stretched uterus, and yet I have never consciously, and to my knowledge, been pregnant. I have had equidistant sores that have appeared on both of my subscapularis muscles at the same time. I have been drugged. I've been abducted from my home. I've had guns pointed at my head. I've had death threats. And much, much worse, believe it or not, by being in these programs and experiments. The after effects of this have made me socially avoidant most days, and it is extremely hard to establish relationships with people I can trust as a result of these abominations, and I thank the committee for hearing my statement.
Thank you.
Mr. Ken Rhodes?
Juan, we are actually, I think people are being so good about keeping the pace, and this is so stressful for many of them, we can allow them to slow down just a little bit, okay? This is important for them.
My name is Ken Rhodes from Michigan. I'm here to tell you that the use of electronic weapons and mind control is helping the United States against the American people. You may think this will never affect you, but there will come a day when this will affect all of you, your children, their children, and every generation from this day forward. I'm here to speak for every person affected by these horrific crimes against humanity. I can't go. Thank you.
If you want, Ken, if you want to get back in line at some time and you want to finish that we would understand. What? Someone could certainly read it for him, yes. Thank you for doing that. And you are, I'm sorry?
My name is Lisa Becker.
Thank you, Lisa.
I had the privilege to address you at the last commission meeting. I'm here to speak for every person affected by these horrific crimes against humanity by a tyrannical group of people committed to eugenics and population control. If you're not part of this inside group of tyrants, you are like all of us here today. Ask yourselves, have you forgotten what it is to be an American and to be brought into tyranny? You will soon learn what it is to be a slave. Allowing this to continue is allowing our rights and freedoms to be taken away from all of us, one right at a time. It's interesting how much technology exists that would find the criminals and the perpetrators of this heinous crimes of electronic harassment and terroristic tactics being used against innocent U.S. citizens on a daily basis. These technologies should be used for the betterment of our society. But you know what the most powerful weapon is in our arsenal that would put an end to these horrific crimes once and for all. It is someone giving a damn and correcting the things that are taking place. We have all gone to people who took an oath to protect and serve, who have been in commissions to investigate the unethical treatment of citizens in human experimentations. We have been denied protection and service and have been ignored by commission after commission. Enough is enough. This is America. We're supposed to be better than this. We all know what Hitler did to the Jewish people. When this all comes out, what the American government has done to their own people, it will make Hitler look like a saint. If some of you didn't get some morals, thank you, but I'll finish. Well, then you don't understand what we're going through. If some of you don't get some morals or conscience, you will I'm sorry, I can't read the rest of it. Thank you.
Ken and Lisa, thank you very much.
I'm also a victim. I'm 67 years old from MK Ultra. Thank you.
Thank you.
We need a hearing on this.
Thank you.
Miss Sandra Fields.
In a way, I'm very sorry to address you like this because I think that what you're doing is very admirable. But I'm here to represent this other group, and I am also targeted, and this is my story. My name is Sandra Fields. I'm an architect, recipient of Who's Who of Women in America Achievement Award, and have run a successful business for over 28 years. My life and livelihood have been compromised for the last 11 years by being attacked by electromagnetic radiation torture and by organized stalking. I cannot live in my rent-stabilized apartment in New York City as a result of this torture. I'm currently staying in motels and friends' houses in the last year. Thousands of Americans are currently suffering from chemical, electromagnetic, psychological, and physical torture with no government relief or laws. Our servicemen, prisoners, and thousands of unknowing, innocent civilians are currently being lamed, tormented, and tortured as a result of military research, medical research, pharmaceutical research, physiological and psychological studies that have virtually destroyed participants' sanity, physical well-being, reputation, and privacy. Government projects like MK Ultra and COINTELPRO are rumored to be active today, with updated forms of surveillance and torture and technologies. In 2010, Morrison and Furster won the right to proceed with a case against the CIA, Department of Defense, and the U.S. Army for veterans' development of multiple diseases and ailments tied to a secret testing program in which the United States military personnel were deliberately exposed to chemical and biological weapons and other toxins without informed consent. Sleep deprivation, poisoning, and high-frequency doses of continuous microwave pulses are inclined to increase one's chances for mental disorders, autism, arthritis, multiple sclerosis, cancer, and Alzheimer's disease. The body's immune system is broken down. Their nervous system and the brain and spinal cord are attacked and maimed. There are no laws to prevent electromagnetic attacks, except in Maine. The federal government does not acknowledge these crimes. There is no literature, educational resources, or assistance for victims. I would like to ask this committee to consider an investigation into these unethical violations and a task force be created for educational and to help people who are in trouble of these situations. And I'd be honored to help in this thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Stephen Popitek.
I just want to give thanks and gratitude for this commission actually being here and being able to bear witness to our testimonials as well. I think it's really a credit to Obama, even though I'm against a lot of his policies, that he would actually create this type of commission. I do hope that it goes beyond these walls, though, and actually creates some type of implementation for change. I could speak for hours about my own personal experiences and some of the more modern versions of projects that several people have talked about. My harassment started back in 1997, more from a remote influencing perspective. I had made contacts in different military, industrial complex, basically in different agencies. I had received microwave harassment actually on and off for a number of years, where they were trying to project images of suicide and various states of basically emotional mood management. This was confirmed to me in 2001 by a contact at the National Security Agency. He worked in community. I'm not sure if he's retired at this point, but I talked to him recently. He worked in Communications Intelligence Division of NSA for 25 years. This is right after 9/11, a month after, when he came to meet with me at my part-time job at the time. And he basically was working at kind of like in that division. He was examining different types of abuses that were going on in the NSA. And he stated to me personally that my case fell within the realm of potential abuse in the agency that he was investigating. At this point, he's still involved in the agency. I can provide his name and information more in private, though, because I don't want to get in trouble for overt disclosure of someone who's still active in that agency, especially with the technology they have. But
anyway, he basically also confirmed to me that what I experienced in terms of just the tip of the iceberg of part of my experiences with the emotional projection, he said that that was very common and that they were using microwaves because they had taken really advanced EEG images of people in different emotional states, mapped those digital brainwave signatures, emotional clusters of people feeling different emotional states. They said that they can take those digital brainwave signatures, piggyback on a certain bandwidth of microwaves as a carrier wave, and they can target people worldwide without need for a local transmitter. He confirmed all that to me and said that they use satellite to target anybody they want, and it's a very common procedure within this portion of the NSA, which is horrendous that they actually let this going on. So I think the idea of the non-consensual abuse needs to be extended to more of the covert military establishment. And then later on in 2003, when I was getting more advanced projections with like multi-layered, not just from my conscious feelings, but into my unconscious, he said that they were trying to fine-tune their projections on me to see how I could block it out. Because I work more in the consciousness field of meditation, alternative spirituality. So I do different techniques to help people block out some of these frequencies by taking control of their own biophotonic fields. I've also made contact with many scientists over the years, underground scientists who used to work in various intelligence areas, who've also confirmed this and much more beyond technologies, where they use longitudinal electromagnetic wave technologies, technology that Tesla first developed, which also could be used in alternative healing. I'm also aware of a friend I know upstate who's been curing people of different illnesses using this technology, but he worked in the Pentagon for decades and confirmed some of this technology is also being used for more of the nefarious activities. I can go on for hours, but I'll probably provide written testimony. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Rodney Biddle. Mr. Rodney Biddle.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. I'm here today representing the organization and also myself under the technological advancements of industries, whether it be medical or military. I've been under attack for some 25 years. Mentally and physical abuse, psychological abuse, pornography. Also have always negative, as this gentleman was talking about, suicidal attempts in the mental, put through torturous things such as mental abuse caused by car accidents, maybe one of your family members dying, maybe your sister or your brother. Committee members, I ask you to think for a second and acknowledge that this does happen, and it is relevant to today, and it is relevant to the bioethical issue committees. And one thing I would like to mention that might give you some insight to just how detailed and how powerful this is. I was in my living room one day, and this computer came in, the interface of this computer, and it said something to me about it because I was called satanic and antichrist for the ugly, nasty, evil torture that it was putting me through. It dropped a program into me, and this would have been the military side of this computer, I'm sure, that was a martial arts technique that I performed to exact precision, where I picked up my coffee table in my living room with my leg, wrapped it around it, smashed it into the wall. If you don't think these are detailed, that they don't get information from every individual that we're talking about, this is how detailed and how powerful these programs can be. Anyone here could be manipulated at any time. Do not think anyone's above it. We need regulations. We need laws. We need people to look into these regulations. Human experimentation is going on for years. What you're talking about earlier, I appreciate the committee. But what we're talking about is so high-tech, so advanced. We're not talking hospitals. We're not talking people in psych wards, but it does include those. We're talking high-tech warfare here. We're talking technological advancements beyond the human comprehension of the mind. We're way, way behind the comprehension of the mind. That's why they're so far ahead. That's why they can get away with it. There's no regulations, no laws against this type of human experimentation. Whether it's in the United States of America that it's happened, these corporations are outside the United States of America producing these weaponry and doing these studies. We need regulations. It's way above, I believe, possibly pharmaceutical companies are helping with this research, backing it. There's no regulation on it. There's the big money people. You know, I realize you guys are regulating that stuff, but there's big money in this medical research. I think they're buying it and selling it, and they're killing us. They're killing you.
We appreciate your story because you can talk to that firsthand. Some of these broader allegations, maybe I've got the crux of what your concern is, okay? Thank you. You bet. Thank you.
Mr. Derek Robinson.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity. Good afternoon to the Commission, and thank you for this opportunity to speak to you this afternoon. My name is Derek Robinson, and I'm president of an organization called Freedom from Covert Harassment and Surveillance. And I represent many of the people that are in this room today, as well as hundreds of those across the U.S. And millions, many thousands across the U.S. who are not in our organization, who are being targeted without their knowledge, as well as those worldwide, millions, thousands, speaking of thousands of people here in China who sent me their statement to give to you. I've heard a lot this afternoon about IRBs, about ethics versus, I'm sorry, my thoughts aren't coming together right now. But anyway, what we want to express to you is that human experimentation by this government is happening today. That there are many thousands of people, whether they are realizing it or not, are being affected. And that we would like to express to you that this is a situation that needs to be addressed by a task force, by a commission, because we are not hearing, because the government is not hearing from those who are being victimized by the experimentation. What you're speaking about tonight is very relevant in terms of those who are being experimented on. But what about feedback from those who are being experimented on, who have no place to go, who need a voice, who are suffering like these people here, who are suffering like those across this country? What you're hearing tonight is just a minuscule amount of what I hear on a daily basis. This is a widespread government program that is non-consensual, that is affecting many, many thousand, and it's growing daily. And the Commission, I would hope, would express to Barack Obama that non-consensual, federally funded human research programs are going on and need to be addressed. And also the victims of those programs need a way to file a complaint, to talk to a commission, to talk to a task force about what is happening to them. Thank you.
Mr. Robert Laboudier.
Thank you for having me. My name is Robert Laboudier. I'm an eyewitness and victim that people are tampering with and retaliating against, and this is my public comment concerning non-compliances of bioethics and other codes of ethics. These non-compliances are a grave, pre-planned, premeditated breach of international conventions and are intentional and heinous atrocities of war crimes against humanity, domestic terrorism, domestic espionage, and genocide. We, the victims, are a group of U.S. nationals that are getting directly affected to the extent of attempted murder. That is genocide. The means and methods that are being abused are electronics and directed energy that unlawfully harness human subjects for unlawful experiments, research, and other exercise, the unlawful practicing and patterning of organized war crimes. The means are electromagnetic, radio frequency, psychotronic fields, voice-to-skull techniques, and other energy weapons that harness unwilling humans against our will and criminally conspires against our rights. They're used with remote viewers as one of the means of unlawful surveillance with criminal intent to terrorize, injure, harass, intimidate, and murder. That's called stalking, with the same intent. Also, unlawful human service trafficking that steals an individual's bioenergy signature through signal splashing unwilling human subjects, then using synthetic telepathy. That's a theft of human intangible property and other directed energies causing physical and mental pain, suffering, and trauma. These perpetrators torture victims in their physical control. This is cruel, unusual treatment and a terroristic hate crime that damages the subject's health, finances, dignity, employability, reputation, and human property while disrupting our mental faculties. Where is the equal protection law that is constitutionally ours? Is it not unethical to keep that from us? Our country's government helped develop these technologies, and they are forbidden to use on U.S. nationals. That is law. To not execute laws concerning these crimes is seditious conspiracy and treason. These unlawful acts are in direct violation of UN General Assembly resolutions, international humanitarian laws, and a slew of U.S. laws, and is completely unethical and irresponsible. We rightfully seek disclosure through prosecution. Thank you for having me. Good day.
Miss Lynn Barenberg.
And I had prepared a commentary, but I find I'm not going to give it. I couldn't put it together in my head for 90 seconds. I'm another person who's being used for non-consensual human experimentation. The Stanford Research Institute, Lockheed Martin, and UC Berkeley are the criminal organizations and university that are involved in this. I can't speak publicly. Anyway, there are no ethics, there's no morality, rules, regulations. They're able to sidestep an IRB, an institutional review board, for God's sakes. I mean, there's a lot going on you people don't know about. You know nothing, and it's coming your way, you know? These nanotechnology institutes that are attached to national laboratories. UC Berkeley has its own molecular foundry. You need to look into this stuff because it's going mainstream. It's not just us. You're going to be affected, your loved ones, your children, your grandchildren. You need to take a look at what's going on here. We may not be the most eloquent speakers, but don't thoroughly discount us.
Mr. Timothy White. Okay. Mr. Ted Gunderson.
What?
Instead, I'm going to make my own comment. I'd like to point.
Mr. Gunderson is not here. Is that the?
I was told that I couldn't speak for him. I was told I could, and then they told me today I couldn't.
I'd be happy to. Would you prefer to speak for him? That's fine.
I am. I'm going to say something.
Go for it. Sure.
Ted Gunderson.
And your name, I'm sorry.
I'm Peter Rosenholm. Ted Gunderson was in charge of the FBI of Los Angeles. And we had written up a speech, but I was told I couldn't present it, so I don't have it.
Oh.
But he basically says that this is all going down. Mind control is destroying our nation, and stuff like that. Honestly, I was told I couldn't do it, so I'm not prepared. But Ted was a top FBI agent, and he would like to support us.
Okay. Thank you very much. Those are the ones. Those are the names that we had scheduled for the microphone. Please stay there. Are there others from the audience? We've got a few more minutes. Let's do it. Why don't I just? Would you rather just give us something rather than speak? Is that your? No, I would like to speak. Please go to the microphone. Identify yourself. No, I'm kidding you. I'm kidding.
Hello, everyone. My name is Leslie Crawford. I'm here from the state of Michigan. I wanted to speak about biotechnology applications being utilized on my person. I have medical reports showing eye damage being done to my eyes. My eyes does not have a mirror image. I also have nanowiring inside my eyes. I have pictures of the actual implants from the eye doctor. Once enlarging the nano implants, you will see a copy of the actual particles in my eyes. I have CAT scans, MRIs, and PETs showing wiring, nanowiring in my head. This is my brain. It's straight from the right side to the left side of my head. I also have implants in my chin, in the chin region on both sides. One side shows a wire. The other side shows the actual implant. Implant particle devices coming down through here. Projectiles of the nanoparticles on the side of my head in large pictures. These crimes is happening in America. This is a domestic problem, not only international. The victims is not being just victimized individually. We are being victimized and our family members as well. Gang stalking tactics and harassment was utilized to implement us into this program unconsensually.
Leslie, I think your comments reinforce much of what we've heard, and if you don't mind, I'd like to make room for others at the microphone now, since it seems to be reinforcing. Juan, I'd ask you to pick somebody, this gentleman right here. Yeah. I'm sorry, who's been waiting? Oh, yeah, please.
Okay. My name is Eugenia Durden.
I'm sorry, Eugenia?
Eugenia Durden, yes. Everything I've heard from this commission and this panel about ethics, they were mostly talk about pharmaceuticals research, but I haven't heard anyone talking about a psychotronic weapon research or bioelectromagnetic weapon research. Who in this panel are familiar with a psychotronic weapon? Raise your hand, please. Who of you know about psychotronic weapons? Any one of you? Psychotronic bioelectromagnetic weapons. Are you familiar with that?
Not at all.
No? Okay. In this audience, is anybody familiar with a psychotronic weapon? Okay. Okay, the audience is familiar with that, and I think that in order for a panel or a commission to be able to help this problem and this issue, we'll have to have more knowledge on what psychotronic weapons are. I am physically leashed from my neck to the electromagnetic power of one of the weapons that is being used against me. I get tortured day and night. At night is with nightmares and all kinds of dreams that I don't want in my head. And throughout the day is my body. They prod with my neurological system, so they do anything to my body. Sometimes it's painful, sometimes it makes me sick. It makes me want to throw up. Sometimes I feel I'm going to have a heart attack. They do all kinds of things like jitter, pulsating with the electromagnetic frequencies. They use a program called virtual reality that makes them feel that they are right in there in front of you. And as you know, electricity travels as fast as the light. And you know how fast that travels, right? How fast does it travel? Anybody?
186,000 miles a
Very
second.
good.
Yes.
86,
I tell you what, though, we do need to hear
So I would appreciate if you get more aware and read. There is in the internet. There's all kinds of information now on psychotronic weapons, so that you will probably be able to help us after you have a better knowledge of what these weapons are and what these weapons do. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your patience.
Hi, my name's Kevin Canada, and I can't say it's a joy to be here because I would much rather be someplace else besides here. I would much rather be not a targeted individual, which I have been for the past 8 years. I believe my nightmare started at a VA hospital. 1998, I got very involved in some political stuff, and I won't go into the details, but I became what's called a targeted individual, and my life has changed unbelievably. Gang stalking, electromagnetic weapons, directed energy weapons. People even came in my house and jerry-rigged electricity, and I'm being electrocuted on everything. My appliances, I've been told that they can turn your appliances into weapons against you. So it's become a nightmare. I think I've been implanted at a VA hospital. I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. I know I'm being watched everywhere I go, surveilled, tracked like an animal. We need help. we need to know, we need to be able to go someplace to find out if we have been implanted, what kind of technology are they using against us. We have done nothing but try to get involved, for me to get involved to make this a better country, and for that we've stepped on some toes, and now we are targeted individuals. And I'm sure most of the people here are innocent and are being targeted for reasons they really don't know. So we need your help. And I think the suggestion of having a TI on this commission, I think, is a great suggestion. We need somebody who knows what's happening to us, helping us. But we need the technology to find out if we've been targeted, if we've been implanted, and because they can get these intelligence agencies can get to any doctor, they can get to anybody that we see who might possibly help us, lawyers, attorneys, cops, you name it. They use it to harass us and attack us, and we need your help.
Thank you, Kevin.
Hold on now. Hold on. We're going to go this way.
I'm Rose Kopinski from Madison, Wisconsin. I know you would like to hear a little bit about my story. Often when I'm with people, the perpetrators leave me alone, perhaps to make it look like it's my imagination. And then often when I am alone, they start hurting me, they start fatiguing me. I wanted to say quickly to help the light bulb go off for you, there's always been a continual mysterious missing amounts of billions or trillions in the Pentagon budget, and try to think where that money might be going. There has been a story about, the naughty contractors charging $100 for a hammer. I believe that may be a cover story. I think that, as you were saying, I think that the contractors for the Pentagon have gotten very proliferative. That's not what you were saying, but you were talking about, shutting down or dealing with egregious or abusive situations in research. And I want to say, think about it for a minute. You're very intelligent. Do you think, in the past, things have gone on? Do you think there is nothing going on right now? Really? Zero? Zilcho? Come on. That would be foolish. That would be, that would be somewhat stupid. I'm sorry. That would be deluded. And read Galashek, In the Name of Science, to hear about the history. Read current things like Nick Begich, Controlling the Human Mind, subtitle Tools for Political Control or Tools for Peak Performance. And again, I think it's just an issue of money, 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 and it's gotten out of control.
Thank you. I think this is going to be our last. I think this is going to be our last one. I'll tell you what. I want to take. Is there a woman right behind you? We'll take you also. Why don't we do these last two questions? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is Liliana Connor, and I have also been subjected to these technologies. I think that the Commission is studying the issue of informed consent, and that is a right, a human right that we all should have, even if these are classified operations. All persons should have the right of informed consent so that they could either decline participating of such studies or otherwise opt out if they're informed at a later date that they have been subjected to these studies. And non-consensual experimentation is a total violation of human rights. It should be outlawed, any non-consensual experimentation. People should not have to be subjected like this, and it would be important if you could recommend to President Obama to change the regulation of informed consent to include even classified operations on persons, and to outlaw and forever ban any non-consensual experimentation in the United States.
Thank you. By the way, I did not get your name. Liliana Connor. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Letitia Peters. I'm Trenton, New Jersey. I spoke last time in March, and since then my life has gone downward. And it's a shame that we are Americans and we just want to be treated like Americans. And we are part of a non-consensual human experimentation which uses highly advanced electronic technology without our informed consent or knowledge. And we are speaking for thousands of American citizens. We do not want an apology. We want justice, and we want justice now. I am requesting that the Presidential Commission conduct an investigative hearing on non-consensual human experimentation, and I do have credible evidence. I'm submitting 1,158 videos and pictures that's been occurring for the last 2 years. I'm also presenting 10 attachments, which includes my 14-page public comment, plus Robert S. public comments, testimonies from Queen, Ottawa, 3 pages of testimony for Cindy Goldman. I actually have a 16-page letter from Japan for the Technological Crime Victims Network. Also, I have a prayer because we really need prayer. This country needs prayer because so many people have died or lost their lives, and we just want justice. And I just would like to come forward to submit all this information.
Please feel free to give it to Val right here. I think with that, we do need to wrap. It's difficult to know how to respond to this session. Obviously, there is deep concern and from the. Thank you. Thank you all for your input. How many, Val, how many were on the, we really got those on the list. I'm so sorry. I tell you what, we do have ways to submit through the website. Is that correct? So we do get a chance to read that, but you're going to need to remind me what the site address is for everybody. Oh, it's right up there. So you can submit, and you must. Please do submit on that, okay? So thank you. I think we're.
Just 1 second. I believe it's been done with purpose. Did you ever receive my letter?
We really.
Did you receive my letter, Liz? Yes, we did. Did you receive it? I would like to have the answer. Torture.
Do you?
I'm sorry.
We have them.
I'm sorry. Please.
We do have
Did you
your.
receive my letters?
Yes. Yes.
Do you receive?
Yes.
What do you do in this regard, huh? Did you receive my phone calls, huh?
Hold on just a moment. Please, sir. Why don't, your name, sir? I'm sorry. Edward. Why don't we, if we can, I was just going to say, if I would allow some time to let you finish, and if I could indulge, if the commission would indulge a little extra time in our agenda, will that satisfy your need? Thank you, sir. You have 1.5 minutes, please.
Could we ask other people to?
We need others to be seated, though, please. Everyone seated. And I'm sorry. Okay, well, you need a microphone. We need the microphone to you. You have.
You were afraid to talk to me?
No.
Yes, you are.
I'm sorry. I had asked you, please, to. I was happy to give you time in front of the commission. It doesn't sound like that's what you want. Okay, why don't you take the microphone, and we'll give you 1.5 minutes like everyone else. You need the microphone so we can have a record. And please give us your name again.
My name is Edward Katz.
Edward?
I'm from Palo Alto, California.
Okay. Calmly, please. Tell us your story or tell us your comment, please.
We did send the name Mrs. Amy Goodman.
Okay.
A horrifying letter, which has been actually supported by the video statement.
Oh, my.
This video statement shows up acts of physical torture by use of brain implants. All my family received while we moved to Bay Area, California, and settled right next to the Stanford Research, including my children. 2 boys been implanted in optic nerves, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, Mrs. Barbara Boxer requested headquarters FBI to provide information in this regards, and FBI told us what we are on the experiment. Then, Department of Justice, Mr. Holder, told us what we have to learn how to live with that, with torture, with robbery, and this is on tape. And Mrs. Gottman has this tape, and we beg you so many times, please call Obama, stop torture. Obama can stop torture. Did you call? Did you call Obama? We're asking you, stop torture. Physical torture, please.
Yeah, please, we can...
Inhumane torture. Just take a look at this picture, people.
Okay,
this is,
thank you very much.
Especially we came from Soviet Union. Especially we came from the communist bloc, here for the freedom and what they did to my babies.
It's a horrific, obviously horrific story, and I think we can. Val can take it. She's our head staff person. Thank you very much. Edward, I thank you for your civility I thank you for your civility in presenting to us, and I think with that we should stand adjourned. So thank you all very, very much for a good day. Bye bye.
Go ahead. Hi there. I'm Dr. Moss David Posner, and this is the third in a series of organized stalking survival, so part 3. Rick Pinheiro, who usually is with me, had to leave early, unfortunately, and he regrets that, I'm sure. But we want to go ahead and make sure that we have a tape out for you folks so that we didn't forget you. By way of information, tonight we did have a meeting, and this is what we usually do every 2 weeks or 4 weeks, depending, is to get a tape out the same night that we have a meeting of the local targeted individuals groups. Now, there are a couple of things I want to tell you, but let me give you a little bit of background about the organized stalking survival or targeted individual group that met this evening. We had 3 additional people come down in a carpool from the East Bay area who have been targets, and each one of their stories is another nightmare story, and each one of them is very credible. Now, my colleague Rick and I are very good at picking up on perps, and these people were not perps. They're the real deal. And the meeting went very well. They were just happy to be here for the hour and a half or 2 that they were here. As I look back, I wish we had spent more time with them, but unfortunately we couldn't. We're lucky to have my professional taping man, Nitesh Patel, who's dropped everything and even postponed for an hour his bowling game so that he could tape this for all you folks this evening. And I want to tell you a little bit about the things we talked about in this meeting. Now, one of the things that is very important for people to remember is this. All of you have suffered as a result of this, whether it's psychological, physical, usually both. But what you have to remember is the more pressure that's being put on you, the more people that are telling you, the more aggravation that you're going through, tells you one thing that you need to keep in mind and never forget it. And that is, these people are scared to death of you. Otherwise, they wouldn't be spending the time and the money to do all this to you. You're very important to them. I know that doesn't make you feel very flattered, but it's very true. They are spending a lot to keep this thing alive. Now, you might say, why are they doing this? They're doing this because of 2 reasons. The major reason is they are practicing finding out the ins and outs of mind control on groups and individuals so that they can keep who's ever left in this country under some sort of control. Now, I probably couldn't find a better audience that would appreciate that statement without thinking I was paranoid or weird than you folks, because you've seen paranoid and weird technology, and this is no surprise. But that's what this is all about. Other cases, there are local police, FBI, and so forth, who have enough clout that they can pull resources to harass an individual that may have crossed them. But they're all part of the same club of misfits. They're all part of the same clown club. So just understand it from that point of view. You have more strength in being alive, in being able to watch this tape, in being able to understand what's being said, and being able to act on it. You have more going for you than these clowns have going for them. Because if they were in a similar position you are now, I'd love to see how long they'd last. I don't think they'd last very long. Think about that for a moment. I saw an interview between a guy who trains the Rangers, Army Rangers. And it was a documentary on TV. And the interview was asking, why do some people endure the survival training and other people drop out? Has it to do with physical endurance or training, intelligence? He said, it doesn't have to do with any of those things. He said, what it has to do with is attitude. If people can convince themselves that they can endure, and they keep talking to themselves, they call it self-talk. Come on, you can do it. Come on, you can do it. It makes all the difference in the world. I could say a lot more about that, and I will in the future. But I just want to give you a little bit of a pep talk here because you deserve it and you need it. We survive, that's what the name of this tape is, Organized Stalking Survival. We survive by the positive attitude, no matter what's happening. You can't make them go away, but if you're going to make them go away or lay off, ironically enough, the only way you're going to do that is not by giving in and saying, okay, I'll be good. That just encourages these clowns even more. You do it by saying, you know what, bring it on. I don't care. I ain't stopping. Because the more that you resist the temptation to give in, the harder it is for them. It's going to make it harder on them and easier on you, believe it or not. Easy for me to say, although I've been involved myself, so I think I'm qualified to comment. But I haven't been hit as hard as some of you. The other thing I want to tell you is be very suspicious of people you don't know. You can drive yourself crazy. There are things to look for. I'll be very honest with you. I am extremely suspicious of each and every online stalking or harassment group that exists. And I'm suspicious of them for the following reasons. One, years ago, when I first got involved with these groups, the moment I started to raise pointed questions, somehow the group leader or leaders found some excuse for forcing me out of the group. I've seen variants of this most recently. That's why I left the last group I was with. What better place to keep track of the victims and know exactly what they're doing? What better way to program them to be than to be the systems operator for an online group? That's where they get their information, and that's where they program you. The other thing about these online groups, they are very good at letting all kinds of garbage information in. You see these discussion threads. If you weren't schizophrenic before you started to read them, you will after, because they talk about everything under the sun and so forth, and it only aggravates the disorganization of the thinking of the people who are in the group. Third thing is, what they should be doing is showing you how to survive, not just, oh, that's a terrible thing. Well, you might try that shield, and I don't know about that. Well, what do you think? Nonsense. They should be giving you an online manual, how to survive government harassment. And we're getting together something like that for you guys. The important thing is, do not give in. Develop a routine every day, however crazy it may sound. Go to bed at the same time. If you can't close your eyes and you don't fall asleep, get up, get a glass of warm milk, go back to bed. If you don't fall asleep in 30 minutes, get up again. In other words, follow routine. Even if you can't force yourself to do something during it, but follow a routine. Next, take notes on everything. Take notes on everything, write everything down. Carry a smartphone. If somebody gives you a hard time, you're not sure, just hold it up, punch the thing, and see what happens. Because one thing these people are scared to death about is exposure. And there are other techniques as well. There's just so much that we could go into. We don't have time to do it all. If you have any question, you can write to us. I'm Dr. Moss David Posner. Leave comments here on organized stalking survival, and I will be more than happy to answer any questions or comments you may have. So, good night, God bless, and don't give in to evil. Hi there, I'm Dr. Moss David Posner, and this is part 5 in a series of organized stalking survival. This will be the final segment that I'll be appearing. I believe Rick Pinheiro is most anxious to continue, although I can't speak for him. I think he will. But I believe that we have met a parting of the ways, unfortunately. And I think Rick has a lot to offer, and I think that he has had a lot of experience, and he is very low-key and well-measured. And I encourage you to listen to what he has to say. I will start my own series now. It will be mostly on harassment with an eye to the medical aspects to the extent to which that we know something about them. Unfortunately, some of the things that came up recently are a little troubling to me, and I'm making this video and I want to put this first part in perspective so there's no misunderstanding. Please understand that as professionals, doctors have to be extremely careful about what we say and what we promise. It's not just an individual being sued, possibly to slander. It's a question of public trust and a question of professional ethics. We don't have a reputation of standing behind what we say and diagnose because we insist on it. We have it because we've earned it. And the only way we can do that is being ruthlessly honest and objective with ourselves and with our patients. Rick seems to feel that this letter that he sent me is appropriate, and I'm a little troubled. I'm going to read you one sentence because it needs to be clarified. I won't mention a name. He said, quote, "We had the meeting in Fresno, and the first thing you said to blank was, quote, I understand you're in need of a letter and I will do that for you, close quote. 4 of us heard it. But you tell me and Derek you can't do it. I can understand why, but why tell her that you will?" Now, the only reason I'm reading that is not because I want to have a he said, she said thing. Believe me when I tell you, I don't make letters or statements to people I've never met. I can't read their minds, whether I've met them or not. I can't claim to know what they need, much less be able to meet that need when I've never met them in the first place. Even if I had met the person, I would still have to have some sort of doctor-patient relationship in order for me to make a responsible statement on their behalf if it's to be believed. I never made any such statement. I never will. In 50 years, I've never made that. And Derek Robinson was quite correct when he said that I refused to do that, because that's what I told him, so there was no misunderstanding, because I could see this could become an issue. I don't recall the person in the meeting saying that I promised them that, because I could hardly have promised them when I never saw them before in my life. But I can tell you that no responsible professional is going to make a statement unless he has reason to make it and has the experience with the patient. So I want you to understand clearly, I get letters from people all over the world, and some of them are heartbreaking. They want me to tell somebody this and tell somebody that. Why? Because I have some status as a professional, and most of the people in this world don't have that kind of status, nor do they have any reason to have it. But they're helpless, and they have no one to speak for them. And they want somebody that's responsible to stand up. And quite honestly, I wish more people in the medical profession did stand up for people who are hurting. After all, that's part of the oath that we took. If you have something that you want me to help you with, if I know you, if I talk with you, if I examine you, I can, within certain limits, cautiously make certain statements, and I would tell you what they would be before I'd even put a pen to paper. So I want you to understand clearly what the limits of a professional are and what the responsibilities are. I hope in the upcoming series that I'd like to make, I can make some suggestions. Rick is very good about the nuts and bolts of dealing with it, the tactics of dealing with stalking and survival on what you might call a street basis. And I've learned an enormous amount from him. His experience is invaluable. He's had extensive military experience. He's had survival training. Outstanding. I am a physician, and I have something else to contribute. I hope that this breach will not affect your respect for either of us or both of us in the future, because we need to help you and you need the help. And we want to be there. I want to be there for you, and I can't speak for it, but certainly his concerns suggest the same. So please understand that this has occurred. I don't want you to let this be on your conscience or bother you any longer than it has. If there are specific things you'd like me to discuss from a medical point of view, please mention them in the comments on the video. The title of the series that I will start, I will simply say, Government Mind Control, A Medical Perspective, and I will make the series by that name. So thank you very much. I appreciate all of your support. God bless, and take care of yourself.
Well, to paraphrase Winston Churchill, the government is either at your feet or at your throat. And in some cases, they're in your head. We're talking about weapons of mass control. And we all know that the government is all about controlling us, even though it appears we have less and less control of the government. Joining us today to tell us about weapons of mass control is Dr. John Hall. He's an MD, an anesthesiologist from San Antonio, and he has an amazing story to tell. Welcome, Dr. Hall. Tell us how you got into this, because you're an anesthesiologist, so tell us how you got into people coming to you about voices in their head.
Well, a little unusual story. I am an anesthesiologist in San Antonio, Texas. I had a girl come to me complaining of being stalked and getting voices in her head. Did a little checking. I had known the family, I had known the girl for some time. No history of mental illness, no drug history in the past. So I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Before sending her to a psychiatrist. Did some checking, did some bugging of her place with audio. She requested no video cameras, but she did allow audio, and had some people driving around checking on her, and as it turns out, she was being stalked by a former FBI agent that runs a private investigative agency in San Antonio. They were breaking into her house, putting Rohypnol in bottled water and other food substances in her place.
And what does that do, Rohypnol?
Rohypnol is a date rape drug. It blocks your memory. And we're essentially sexually assaulting her, using her as a sex slave. But the interesting thing about the way they were doing it, and which gets into the electromagnetic technology, is they were breaking in, putting Rohypnol in the bottled water, and subliminally controlling her to drink where the drug was placed.
Wow. Wow, that's interesting. So when did this happen? What
this
year?
all happened prior to 2006.
Because this has been an open secret for some time. It's something that's not talked about very much, although we do have articles here from the Washington Post. We've got articles from Wired Magazine. They've been talking about this here and then in articles since the early 2000s. So you can find some articles going back earlier than that even. And we've got pretty much every branch of the military has got their own little projects, as well as commercial applications.
Oh yeah, mind control technology is one of the most common crimes, at least vocalized or complained about on the internet today. It seems to be getting the least amount of coverage in the major media.
Wow.
So that's why when we went to the police and had the identities of the stalkers, there's no way to prove the electromagnetic technology, but we could prove the stalking, and we could prove the sexual assault. And we're told by the police that, well, the guy doing this to you is former FBI, he's a private investigator, he stalks people for a living, that's what he does. And she had no memory.
Sexually assaults people for a living, that's what he does.
And she has no memory of the sexual assaults due to the Rohypnol, at least not good enough memory to bring a case. And it's like the police told us, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
Yeah, it's also who you know.
And who you know. So the next best thing, I thought, you know what, I need to write all this down in a book. Of course, the names have slightly been changed since we couldn't bring any of them to prison. Once the book came out, then I saw that I was immediately inundated with thousands of other people voicing the same complaints of organized stalking, of directed energy weapons attacks, burning, twitching, severe headaches, blurred vision, as well as hearing the voices of their perpetrators in their head or in their surroundings while they're being attacked.
Wow. Well, let me go down the list of some of these that I came up with. We've got DARPA has a sonic projector that was reported on in 2007. Of course, it had been around for quite some time before then. Army has something they call voice to skull. We've got the Air Force using microwaves to create sounds at Brooks Air Force Base. We've got the Marine Corps with their Medusa project. We've got the State Department, as reported by the Washington Post in 2005, working on voices implanted in people's heads. We've got a couple of companies, one that has patented something called hyperssound. That's American Technologies. Has also got Holosonic Research Labs, also has a patented version. So the military-industrial complex has been all over this. When you see something this wide, this is not just one little research project from one organization. And this is something that 5, 10 years ago, it was being reported on in even mainstream press like the Washington Post, and yet nobody knows about this.
Well, the people who follow the internet pretty closely, and certainly the victims of this technology know about it, but you're right, there's been a lot of research done into how to put voices into one's head. It was found long ago that if you can put a voice into someone's head, you can do several things. If I put a voice that's foreign to your normal thought pattern in your head, that becomes harassment. And the harassment over time will make you display signs of schizophrenia. When you go and tell people that you're hearing voices, we've been patterned to turnkey see that as schizophrenia and not even look to see if there's a legitimate source for it. If I put a voice in your head that's in your voice, and if you pattern a thought, like I tell some of these victims, when you read a book, you're actually hearing your own voice in your head as you read. If I put that voice in your head, then that becomes a thought. Wow. And you'll act on those thoughts, and that's how they think that some of this is being used for subliminal control.
Wow. I know that in some of these articles I was reading on the mid-2000s, they were talking about how they were using it as the voice of God, as the voice of Allah, because they figured that it was something that they could use. They thought that the people that they were going against that were Muslims were very religious, superstitious. And
that was used in the field of battle. The voice of God weapon, which is actually called SQUAD, or Silent Sound Spread Spectrum, was used in the first Operation Desert Storm. That was one of those scenarios where 1,500 Iraqi soldiers disassembled their weapons, got to their knees, and surrendered to 150 Marines who didn't have enough slip ties to tie them all together, because, and this was admitted, that they used SQUAD to put the voice of Allah in their heads to tell them to surrender. Wow. Before that, in the mid to late 80s, 5 separate inmates from the Utah State Prison had written affidavits saying that they were put in solitary confinement and were experimented on with some type of electronic device that put voices in their head, and all of them claimed that they could tell the voices of the people doing the experimentation on them were responding back to their thoughts.
Wow.
So this has been going on for a while. Unfortunately, it's just not gotten any major media coverage until recently.
So they're basically setting themselves up as the ventriloquists, and we're the dummies or the zombies, right?
Well, it's like I've said in with other reporters and other shows, that guns and taxes won't control everybody.
Yeah.
Electromagnetic technology will.
Wow. Wow. And we know that too. I mean, I've said for the longest time that the IRS really wasn't so much about getting your money. It wasn't about revenue. It was really about controlling you. It was a way of offering you carrots and sticks. And of course, they're only collecting enough to pay the interest to the Federal Reserve. We know they were created at the same time. But this is something. So we all know that the government is into controlling us, right? And whatever they can use. And they've had very, very simple ways to control us in the past. I mean, they've got the media, they've got schools, they've got the income tax system. Everything that the government is doing is targeted towards controlling us. So, of course, they're going to have every branch of government working on this type of thing, because that gives them very precise control over what we're doing.
Well, and with the new revelations coming out about the NSA, 10 years ago when I first started writing about some of this and getting into this type of science, it did seem sci-fi and it did seem far-fetched to a lot of people, especially a lot of people thought the brain was too complex to manipulate that way. Since some of Snowden's leaked records about the NSA, most of us already knew that the NSA was listening to our phone calls.
And we were accused of being paranoid.
Yeah, and exactly.
Right.
Accused
so
of
now we're accused of being schizophrenic if we hear voices, but we know that there's some reality of that.
But it's not too far of a stretch if they have computers big enough to collect all the data on our text, on our cell, and on our emails. And then it came to light that they admitted that several NSA agents were using NSA technology to target love interest. And it was happening so frequently that instead of HUMINT for humans intelligence or SIGINT for signals intelligence, that they actually have one that they refer to as LOVEINT. And these were agents that were actually targeting either girls they saw or met that wanted to watch them, or ex-spouses or current spouses with NSA technology. And it's happening frequent enough that it's called LOVEINT.
Well, it's always like any technology. It can be used for good or it can be used for evil. I don't know if there's any good use for putting voices in people's heads, but certainly what this reveals is the dark side of people that are involved in this. And we've seen this in the past. We've seen people very high up in the NSA, like Michael Aquino, who was a Satanist, who founded the Temple of Set. So we know that there's some very dark, I would even say Dr. Strangelove type of characters who are involved in this. So it's really not surprising that that would happen. But we've had some revelations about connections to this, possibly with the recent Navy Yard shooting. Tell us about that. Well, stay tuned. Right after the show, we're going to have a lot more of this interview with Dr. John Hall, and he's going to explain to us the connection between electronic harassment and what Aaron Alexis wrote on his gun, My ELF Weapon. Subscribers to Prison Planet TV gain access to all this content and more, and they get it right away. Well, that's it for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night at 7 o'clock Central, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Now you can watch The Alex Jones Show live as it happens at Infowars.com/show.
You'll find links to all of our content there and a free 15-day trial for Prison Planet TV.
More than 60 movies and documentaries all in one place at Infowars.com/show.
Well, welcome back. We've got the continuance of that interview with Dr. John Hall, and he's going to explain to us what was meant by My ELF Weapon. And he's also going to go into a lot more detail about how people all over the country are being harassed electronically.
When I first saw the Navy Yard shooting, putting that in conjunction with the last two mass shootings that we've had as well, the Sandy Hook shooting and the Colorado shooting, most of us that are working in this technology were already a little bit suspicious that maybe there was some control issues going on. We know that our current administration desperately wants gun control. As a matter of fact, if you notice the early stories coming out immediately after the Navy Yard shooting, you know, all of the pundits were saying it was an AR-15. They immediately jumped on the fact that this was an AR-15. Well, it wasn't an AR-15 at all. It was a shotgun and a handgun.
And he even led up to it the day before. Obama went on Stephanopoulos' Sunday talk show and talked about how 80–90% of the people wanted gun control. It's not true. 80–90% of the people are against him on Syria. They're not with him on gun control.
No, not at all. So when I saw this, you know, putting it into the rest of the context that they need these mass shootings in order to pass their gun control agenda, I'm already a little bit suspicious. Well, then when I saw that he had complained to the police, and he tried to seek out help, he went to the police and said that he had had an altercation in the airport, that he felt like he was followed, and that there were people putting voices in his head and vibrations into the room at his hotel meant to sleep deprive him, which incidentally, most of the victims of this technology that I work with all suffer from sleep deprivation by that very same means. Then I knew we were onto something, that this guy probably was being victimized himself before he went and did the shooting. When I saw that he had etched into the side of his shotgun, "This is my ELF weapon," that pretty much told me, and this guy worked in the field. You know,
he's not talking about Legolas. What's the connection with ELF?
Extremely low frequency waves, and extremely low frequency waves are very easily used to manipulate the human brain. The human brain is very responsive to ELF waves. As a matter of fact, HAARP generates ELF waves by heating up the ionosphere and bouncing ELF waves back to the planet.
And the ELF waves are used to communicate with submarines. And that would be one connection with the Navy Yard.
Out of Michigan and Wisconsin, 56 miles of antennas there to communicate under the sea with submarines with ELF waves. They're unshieldable for the most part. They travel through the Earth. They've also noticed that during seismic events where the Earth releases an abundance of its own ELF waves, that you typically see more UFO sightings around those areas, and they think that it's an effect from the ELF waves on human beings' temporal lobes of the brain, that might be done. Michael Persinger at Laurentian did a lot of research with ELF waves. showed that you could stimulate the temporal lobes of the brain with ELF and microwave and give people a sentinel being effect where you felt like someone was in a room with you. He even was able to simulate alien abduction using that. So we know the brain is very sensitive to them. That in conjunction with putting voices in somebody's head. I don't think he went to that Navy Yard being subliminally controlled by this technology to do this. They may have been attempting to subliminally control him to shoot someplace else. But by etching that in the side of his weapon, I think he went to the area where he thought the source of the voices was coming from, as more as a protective effort or a vengeance effort, not a controlled effort.
Right, right. So if he did some research, found out that ELF is being used to put voices in your head, and he saw that even if that wasn't what they were doing at the Navy Yard, he saw they had a big ELF thing. That's a very interesting connection. Now talk to us about how you distinguish between something that is artificially being beamed in, voices being beamed into you with this technology, versus somebody who really is schizophrenic.
I'm glad you asked that, because I especially being a medical doctor, I don't want to come across as everybody hearing voices is being victimized by technology. Certainly schizophrenia exists. For one, schizophrenia is not quite as common, I think, as the press has led people to believe. It's still, severe schizophrenia is still a relatively rare disorder. Most of the victims that I've worked with can pinpoint the day that they started hearing voices and the day that they noticed organized stalking, people following them around from their home to work. Most of the victims that we've had questionnaires filled out on and talked to are in their late 30s to early 40s. Typically, schizophrenics are identified from 18 years old to 28 years old, maybe a little later in females, but almost always at a young age. Typically, those people are described as never having been quite normal. You don't see it in high-functioning, educated individuals who all of a sudden turned 40 years old and acutely became schizophrenic overnight. Also, if you talk to schizophrenics about what they're hearing, typically it's God or angels or deities or garbled voices like you hear in a subway. The people that are being victimized by this technology are hearing the voices of people that are obviously watching them. Oftentimes they'll know the names of these voices because it's a two-way communication system. So they're hearing the people doing the surveillance talk to each other as well as talk to them. Typically it's their whereabouts in a room is being described, what they're dressed like is being described.
So it's kind of a form of harassment then.
Well, and that's exactly what the loose term for it is, electronic harassment.
So they're not necessarily trying to pretend that they're God. They're just really trying to harass this person and push them over the edge.
Exactly.
Into doing something. Well, that's interesting. So to sum it up, somebody who has real schizophrenia, it's going to be something that is very early in their life, a consistent pattern behavior from very early in their life, whereas somebody that is that is having this done to them, they're going to have a sudden onset of that.
Exactly.
So they've been perfectly normal, then somehow and later in life, all of a sudden, like you said, a switch has been flipped.
Exactly. And we've done surveys on thousands of these victims, and most of them are educated. A lot of them are doctors and lawyers, educated people that were high functioning, that were successful in their careers, and one day started hearing voices, started being stalked, and watched their lives spiral downhill after that. And the other
kind of I'm sorry.
Oh, sure. The other thing with schizophrenia is schizophrenia does respond to treatment. You can put schizophrenics on medication and they'll improve. People that are being victimized by this technology, you can put them on any array of the medications used for schizophrenia or delusional disorder, and they still hear the voices, they still get stalked, and they still get attacked.
Wow, wow, another important difference. Now, have you done any kind of, you looked at them being typically professionals, that sort of thing. Have you done any kind of demographic information saying that there was some kind of a political affiliation with these people, or something where they maybe they had security clearance? Because we've seen how the government is specifically targeting Tea Party groups and groups that they perceive as being hostile to them.
Actually, demographics have been done through an organization called Freedom from Covert Surveillance and Harassment. That's one of many human rights organizations that have actually formed to handle the vast number of exponentially growing complaints of this kind of victimization. This is a growing thing. It's not getting better, it's getting worse. Freedom has done, Freedom from Covert Surveillance and Harassment has done surveys to get the demographics. It doesn't seem to have a gender bias, or I mean a racial bias. It seems to be pretty equal between blacks and whites. It does seem to have a predominant female bias. 70% of the victims are female. Most of them are also voicing complaints of sexual assault.
Right, yeah, that would be the connection.
The political bias we haven't seen. Matter of fact, most of the victims I've worked with are apolitical. Most of them aren't radicals.
Are they people who have worked with the government in some way or might know something?
I have had a number of whistleblowers that have come forward, several former NSA people, several National Reconnaissance Office people that were whistleblowers that have come to me seeking advice on how to escape being targeted.
So now you've written a book talking about how this all came. You basically talked about this case that brought you into this, as well as research that you've done, but you're also working on a movie as well.
Yes, there was a screenplay written on a movie based on a true story, based on a new breed, satellite terrorism in America.
And that's the name of your book?
Yeah. Give
us the name of your book again?
New Breed, Satellite Terrorism in America.
And where can people find that?
Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, or at newbreedmovie.com.
Okay, good. Good. All right, so you're doing a movie of this, and it's not a documentary, it's actually a dramatization, is that correct?
No, we decided not to do a documentary, mainly because a documentary only attracts a certain number of people who want to come and watch that. And it doesn't matter how much fact you back up a documentary with, people are still going to walk away wondering whether it's true. Unfortunately, in today's society, people are more likely to believe a drama based on a true story, or plain fiction, than they are a documentary. So we wanted something that was going to be entertaining and educate at the same time. So we've chose to actually do it a drama based on a true story.
Oh, that's really smart. That's important too. That's one of the things that we were looking at with the Operation Paul Revere. We understand that when you do a news broadcast, people need to know what's going on. It's kind of like an intelligence report. When you're going to wake people up, we found that a lot of people will look at all this. We don't have time in a news broadcast to go behind and document everything that leads up to this, like we're, even in an extended interview like this. So a documentary will wake a lot of people up. But we also know that more people, as you mentioned, are going to be affected by something that is a dramatization. They can identify with the people, and it seems more real to them than if you carefully document everything in a news report or an article or a documentary. If they see a fictionalized report, it's a very powerful thing.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why we kind of went for that genre. Everybody wants to go see a good movie. Only the believers are going to come see a documentary.
That's right, that's true. So as you wake people up, what would you like to see happen to stop this?
What most of the victims want to see is a congressional hearing to get to the legitimate truth from the CIA and the NSA of exactly what the technology is they're being experimented.
Something like the Church Committee hearings.
Or the Rockefeller Commission, exactly. That didn't actually stop MKUltra.
That's right.
The Freedom of Information stopped, but obviously the research went on. But most of these victims are just looking for validation. And that's one of the things that my book has done. At least there's one physician that believes them that they are being victimized by technology and being experimented on. We're also looking for legislation to change in this country that makes it illegal to experiment on you without your consent. Believe it or not, the common rule, our current legislation, doesn't protect the public from experimentation on them by the government. John Glenn tried to pass that legislation years ago and was shot down in Congress. I spoke at the Bioethics Commission that Obama appointed when we had to apologize to the Guatemalans for experimenting on them. I was the only person there that pointed out the flaws in the common rule, that the common rule is so poorly written that it allows us to be experimented on.
Oh, absolutely. We've covered cases where the EPA is feeding diesel fumes directly to people and trying to make them sick so they can change the particulate regulations that they've got going.
So that's kind of the two things we're really looking for, and of course looking for it to stop. And if we can make non-consensual experimentation truly illegal in this country, then at least hopefully that will help.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Hall, for joining us. Thank you for sharing that with everyone and bringing this out in the open. More people need to understand what this is about, and hopefully we can do something about it. Hopefully we can rein in an out-of-control government that's trying to control everything about us.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks for helping expose it.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's not just voice of God technology or MKUltra programs where the government controls our mind. We've got a documentary that is exclusive on DVD from InfoWarsStore.com, State of Mind. And there you'll find out all the many different ways that government controls the population. It's not just these high-tech, secretive, covert methods. It's also things like the media. It's things as mundane as schools. It's an entire full spectrum of control. The government's not going to use just one thing. So educate yourself, educate your friends and your family to protect yourself from this type of mind control. You can get State of Mind at InfoWarsStore.com. Well, that's it for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Hello, my name is Lars Drudgaard. I come from the International Center Against Abuse of Covert Technologies, and I'm very honored that I have been given a chance to interview Mr. Barry Trower, together with my fellow Danish citizen, Mr. Stephen Bell.
My pleasure.
Maybe you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'll tell you how I came into this. In the 1960s, very early 1960s, I trained with the government microwave warfare establishment. I looked at all aspects of microwave warfare, and when I finished my time in the military, because I had a lot of expertise in the microwave field, I was asked if I would carry on with this research. And some people blow this out of all proportion. I was an agent. I don't like the word secret agent, because secret agent, when you say secret agent, people think of James Bond, who wasn't a secret agent and he wasn't a spy. James Bond, the fictitious character, is military intelligence, and I wasn't military intelligence. I was an agent. I collected information secretly, and I spent 11 years collecting information from spies who were a very short part, a very small part of my work. I also questioned international terrorists, international criminals, anybody of immense interest I questioned, and I trained for quite a few years to learn how to do this. They found that there was an unusual number of breast cancers, childhood leukemias, other cancers, and they couldn't work out why. So they changed some of the staff, and then they went down with leukemias and cancers. And again, they changed the staff, and then they looked into this and found they were being microwaved. And this is where the United States became a little bit naughty. They decided to keep this quiet. The Americans used their own people as initial guinea pigs to develop their own weapons. And then when it was discovered what was going on, initially there was a denial that you always get. Then there was a cover-up report, and finally a very renowned professor, I think he has about 18 professorships, John Goldsmith, he wrote the definitive proper report and found that low-level microwaves were causing an enormous amount of cancers and leukemias and ill effects. And by then, everybody was leaping onto the microwaves as stealth weapons, and they go from there, which was the 50s, right up to and including the present day. The ladies were protesting about having American missiles on English soil. And it was a peaceful protest. All they were doing were camping outside the perimeter of the American base. There was no violence, no swearing, no shouting. It was a peaceful protest. And it was found that from the American base, the ladies were being microwaved. And it was actually measured. They were being microwaved to make them sick. And in fact, when the figures came out, there was a disproportionate amount of tumours, personality changes, suicidal tendencies of the ladies. They were deliberately microwaved by the Americans for protesting about their base. With one pulse frequency, you can just make people so suicidal, they can't be bothered to act like a demonstrator anymore. All they want to do is sleep or lay in bed all day. So if you're targeting demonstrators, you make them suicidally depressed. And they don't care about demonstrating anymore because they're too upset. Whereas if you want to cause a specific psychiatric illness, you would have an infrared device that followed the person, and you would link it to a pencil-thin microwave source, so the microwave beam would always target a specific gland or a specific part of the brain, or an eye, or a heart. So you would have them being targeted. They can cause insanity, and it was an experiment. One of the experiments was to take an ordinary sane person, cause insanity, and have a psychiatrist who was unknown to everybody diagnose schizophrenia or paranoia or a psychiatric illness. That was a successful outcome. And the person would spend the rest of their life in an asylum in misery, but to the government scientists, that was a success.
Well, it's a guinea pig locked up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, humans, the difference between humans are like guinea pigs. If they want to experiment on you, by the thousand, they will. And you can be driven to insanity and death, and you just become a tick in a box without any so much as a feeling. Yeah, and this is what they do, and this is why they are above the law. It wasn't until around the 70s that this became secret. For some reason, it was talked about openly. If I'm talking to a spy and I want to find out where the spy was trained, how the spy was recruited, over the 5-year period of training and everything that went on, it's going to take years and years and years. But if you want to talk about microwaves and chips and microwave weapons, they'll just talk about it over a biscuit and a cup of tea. It wasn't secret. Most governments talked openly, or people talked openly about it. It wasn't until the 70s, mid-70s, that I think the full potential of this globally came into force, and the governments decided then to put everything under the Official Secrets Acts. But until then, nothing was secret. It was just talked about openly.
That's actually very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it just wasn't, people didn't know about it. It wasn't general knowledge. You wouldn't meet somebody in the supermarket and say, have you got a chip in? But the people that had them knew they had them, and they would go around talking about them, and other people would talk about them. Whereby, with the special forces, you could send down, if you had an idea roughly what country they were in, you could send down a beam from a satellite. The chip would be switched on by the beam, energized, and would send a signal back. You've got that type of chip. The other type is when it is pulsing continuously to stimulate, let's say, a gland in the body at a set frequency to produce a specific chemical that will produce a specific biochemical response in the brain. So you can have one working permanently, and you can have them working intermittently, and you can have them that will only work if they are stimulated. Yeah, I mean, voices are the easiest ones, because all you have to do is stimulate the cochlea with a set resonant frequency. It's very easy. Voices are very easy, and it isn't people imagining voices. They physically hear them. They physically hear, as I'm talking to you, my voice isn't inside your brain. My voice goes no further than an inch into your ear, no further at all. It's the electrical signal that makes you interpret how I sound. And once you've got this electrical signal, which can be a chip or lots of things, you can physically make people hear voices, certain voices, and it can be any conversation, and it can be anybody you want to hear. It can be a soft, angelic voice. It can be a god. It can be something that scares you, like a devil. It can be anything. Fair enough. So I was there. I went into the back of a big black car, and it took me off in the dark, and then underneath a huge building in the dark. And I was suddenly thinking, well, hang on, this could be a bullet in the back of the head time. I'm getting uncomfortable here. But he took me out and took me to a room, and he said, I'm an international scientist. He said, and something is really, really worrying me, and I have to tell somebody who can tell the world. Now, I actually knew what he told me, I knew was going on anyway, because it had been discussed in other countries. But he said, it is now possible to genetically change bacteriums and virus, genetically change them. What has been developed now is if bacterium, they can lay, and yeasts, they can lay in the soil for hundreds of years in a dormant stage. And it's known by grave diggers or people who dig up old graves, that it's possible when light comes on the bacterium to regenerate the bubonic plague that's been laying in the ground for several hundred years. It only wants that particular frequency and bang, it's active again. You don't need more than 2 brain cells to work out where you go from here. Viruses are neither dead nor alive. They inhabit hosts. If I put a virus inside a dormant bacteria that I know I can spring to life, I go to Norway on a holiday, or Denmark, or Sweden. I just spread the virus around the forests with the dormant bacteria, and I come back. And I can wait, if I like, 100 years, 200 years, or 2 hours. Makes no difference to me. And then all I have to do with HAARP or a similar device is put the frequency, the microwave frequency off the ionosphere down onto Norway. Whenever I feel like it, the virus will spring to life because their host has sprung to life. This is where we are. So countries can now, just by introducing bacteriums and viruses and whatever, they can totally devastate the economic possibilities of another country.
But doesn't that mean that we are in a new Cold War and that the entire military is obsolete?
Oh, you're absolutely right. We are in a new Cold War. And this is why countries are developing this. I mean, really developing this. And this is why all of the microwave transmitters are going up everywhere. Because somebody, if they wanted to, could use them for other effects. The system is up and running. In a 3-month period, I had 5 lady police officers in this house, all with cancer. I've had a series of calls from officers saying that their personalities have been changed. Whenever I go to a country, and I think the year before, I did 6 countries, I think last year or the year before. The questions always come around to Tetra, and they always come around to aggressive behaviour from the police since they started using Tetra. And I have the government documents that say this can cause neurological damage, this can cause cancer, this can cause aggressive behaviour and personality changes. This was at the beginning of the experiment, and the experiment with Tetra is not due to finish until 2018. So it's an experimental system. The United States one was quite interesting. It was to do with special forces, probably 5 or 6 years ago. They came back from a mission, and of the 6 or 8 gentlemen that were in the special forces, 5 of them, I believe, went home. I think it was 5 or 6 went home and severely beat their wives or children or both, where some of the wives died, some ended up in hospital, but they were severely beaten. And it was believed that the communications apparatus they were using was in training the brain and stimulating violence. And this was Fort Bragg. Now, I either had a phone call from Fort Bragg or I had a phone call from the embassy to ask if I knew what frequencies could cause this. Because I ended up talking to each. And I said, don't tell me, I will tell you what frequencies they have been using. Now, the special forces don't just hold them up, they're on permanently. So we're talking massive entrainment, far beyond what the ordinary person would suffer. But it induced such a level of entrainment and violence. So I told them what frequencies I believed they would be using. I sent them documentary evidence, and the whole thing was hushed over, and it was on the news, but then they obviously, I would imagine, changed the frequency. It's been shown that a child using a cell phone, just an ordinary school child, if the child uses the phone for just 2 minutes, the brain waves can take up to 2 hours to return to normal. 2 hours. And that's been published. Now, in those 2 hours, the child's brain is not acting as it should. And it could demonstrate itself in a number of ways. For instance, if the child were in school and made a quick call from the playground, it could be lack of concentration, hyperactivity, bad behaviour. It could be anything like that. And that would slowly ease off over 2 hours. Now that's just from 2 minutes. Now if a child makes a phone call every couple of hours, the brain is going to be entrained permanently. And it's already been published by the industry that a child using microwaves just before bed will have his or her sleep totally disrupted by entrainment. I cited, I think, 200 schools in Europe where a transmitter had been put in or near the playground where they had leukemia clusters. Some of our own MPs here have stood up in Parliament to say that they have 11 children under the age of 11 with leukemia around a transmitter, or 18 children. I mean, cancers are reaching epidemic proportions. There are lots of different types of cancers coming up now. I know in China, they've just had a 3,000% increase in parotid gland cancer, which is the side of the face where you would hold a mobile. We're getting cancers of the eye coming up. Obviously, brain tumours. In fact, brain tumours are quite enormous now in terms of numbers. That I read a report, and I read this out in Canada last year. People are so worried about the numbers of brain tumours that they've re-diagnosed 10,000 brain tumours as endocrine cancers to take them off the statistics. And I do know that in the European Union, we have been told that cancers are at epidemic proportions, and we're talking generally cancers between the ear and the brain. Years ago, our government said to its scientists, when it comes to microwaves, you will only talk about things to do with heat, and that is it. So they won't even discuss anything else. They will deny anything that doesn't have anything to do with heat.
Yeah.
They even deny all of their 40 years of research leading up to this.
Yeah.
Although they've said this can cause cancer and all the damage, they say, no, it can't. We're only looking at heat, and heat is all that matters. Yeah, I prefer to call it lying.
All right.
Yeah. I think I've never known so many liars in my life as what is coming out now from the government. I mean, to put it simply, they did all the research, they knew the dangers, and then they decided to lie to the public for no other reason than to save themselves with lawsuits and to make money for industry. And that's written down, and I've got that written down.
Okay.
So for the last 40 years, the government, the English government, has been lying to the people. And the American government, the Canadian, the Australian, they have been lying. They have been lying to protect industry, protect their profits, to protect themselves from lawsuits. So they are really just liars, and it's provable. I made a statement in Birmingham, in this country, probably 15 years ago, and I haven't changed it since. And I've said that I believe that this industry and the part of the government which is encouraging them will be responsible for more civilian deaths and suffering than all the terrorist groups in the world ever. And with the growth of the industry over the last 15 years, I would say now that these people are probably going to cause more death and suffering than the entire Second World War. And is that genocide? Yes, without a shadow of a doubt. And are they going to get away with it? Yes, because they are untouchable. They are outside the law.
Who is actually behind those decisions? Is this sanctioned by the WHO?
Sanctioned by the World Health Organization, without a shadow of a doubt. It is the same people. It's the same people sit on the ICNIRP certificate. They sit on our government's Health Protection Agency, sit on the World Health Organization. It's the same people. It's the same people. There's probably no more than 20 of them. But they are going to, in my opinion, commit the worst genocide this planet has ever known. Not just people, but animals, plants. They are probably going to cause more destruction than a global war. And in several hundred years' time, people will look back, whoever survives, and look at what we try to do to stop them. Operation Paperclip, at the end of the war, the scientists were pardoned, most of them. They were pardoned for all of the people they had killed, experimented on. They were given new identities, mostly in the United States. They were given new identities, lived an ordinary civilian life, very well paid, and they went to work in laboratories for the American government. And they handed over all of their research, and this is where it came from. And this was the basis of all of this, Operation Paperclip. if they could catch somebody and keep their name secret, that was Operation Paperclip, and they took them back. They took them back and they kept them. They used all of their resources, and there was a lot of scientists. They used all of their resources, and that was the basis of the mind control, the drugs, and everything else. I do know one experiment, just to give you some examples. I know that they found that with one of the subheadings was the microwaves on pregnant women. And they found that they could cause a 57.7 increase in miscarriages in pregnant women, which is just one experiment, you know. So what you're actually doing is killing 57% of all the children. Again, mixing microwaves or electromagnetic waves with LSD, lysergic acid, on 4-year-olds. They just experimented on people, causing any amount of suffering to the point of death. And if people ended up in metal cages or stone boxes for the rest of their lives, that was the way it was going to be, because they were allowed to be experimented on. But as I say, there is no boundary. There is nothing which, to me, is too low. I mean, if you're going to attack a uterus in a child, you can't get much lower. And this is what they were all about. At the end of the Second World War, a committee was formed by all of the Western Allies, the United States and Russia. And it was called the Nuremberg Treaty. And the Nuremberg Treaty was agreed by all the countries from the end of the Second World War. It was set up to stop people like Joseph Mengele, the Doctor of Death, in Bergen-Belsen concentration camp, where he experimented on twins. And they, from the Japanese torturing the American and the British and the European soldiers, the Germans experimenting, the Nuremberg Treaty was set up, and it's very defined and very succinct. And it says that no person may be experimented upon for any reason, and this includes microwave irradiation, for any reason without their consent. And before they give their consent, they must have full knowledge of the length of the experiment, the outcomes, any potential dangers, any potential ill healths. It must be fully understood and explained, and they must give individual consent. And this includes Tetra, which is an experiment that's going on until 2018 to look for cancer and brain damage. So everybody using Tetra is actually breaking the law, the people organizing them. So that was set up. So experiments on people, service personnel, the police officers with Tetra, microwaves, it is all illegal according to the Nuremberg Treaty.
As far as I know, the Nuremberg Code and the Nuremberg Treaty was created after the Nuremberg trials.
Right, yep.
And in the Nuremberg trials, there was a specific trial called the doctors' trials.
Yep.
Do you recall the sentencing of those trials?
They were hanged.
Yeah.
And I've written it. I've written it in my papers, and I've said it on air in the radio. In fact, I said it I was on international radio. It went out to 95 countries 2 Sundays ago. And I said, scientists at the end of the war were hanged for what scientists today are doing and getting away with. Absolutely, yep.
Sentences you to death by hanging at such time and place as higher authority may direct.
It's recording.
Okay. Hello, my name is Tyrone Alexander Dew. I'm actually the author of Satellite Directed Energy Weaponry Terrorism, Illuminati Got Me. It's a book that covers 30 years of experiences of being a targeted individual with the voice to skull and all the other extreme low frequency wave weaponry that the government has created. If you've probably heard about Aaron Alexis, the Washington Naval Yard shooter, he complained about this technology being used against him. I published this a month before the actual incident. This was my suicide note. And if it wasn't for him doing what he did, my family and friends would probably still think that I'm crazy. I do not condone going out committing mass violence. And recently, there was the Florida State shooter, Myron May. His suicide note mirrors the experiences in my book. Today, I have someone very special that I get to meet, Dr. Robert Duncan. He actually helped create the technology several years ago. I'm not sure, how much he's going to speak about what the technology does and what it can do, but for me, this is kind of like meeting, your grand all actor celebrity, This is the only person in my life that can explain that I'm not mentally ill, the Aaron Alexis wasn't mentally ill, the Miriam Carey, who was hearing Obama's voice, which is voice cloning technology, and believed that she was under electronic surveillance, the Myron May, who actually was an assistant trial attorney in New Mexico, a young black man who had a very promising career, who quit his job, went to Florida, where he grew up at, went to Florida State, shot 3 people in front of the Strozier Library. It's one of those things where, if you want to hide something from people, what's the best place to hide it? In a book. There's several books written about this, not very many talking about experiences of a targeted individual for 30 years and how the technology works. Dr. Duncan actually wrote a book in 2008.
10. Well, it was written in probably 2008. Project Soul Catcher. But I've written other books, and my name wasn't even supposed to be on one of them. But yeah, I've been trying to expose this since 2002, I would say. So I've been in the field for over a decade and just trying to expose these technologies. But they've existed much before me, and when I worked on them. I can find targeted individuals as far as, you're one of the oldest ones, from 1976 there seemed to be a large increase in targeted individuals using this technology. And then again, every time the military gets a bigger budget, there seems to be more TIs involved. And then, of course, after 9/11, there was a whole bunch of TIs that were brought into the program. And they're trying to improve on this weapon technology, and they need sample points. And nobody likes to hear they were randomly chosen for a torture program. And you know, as we found out, we don't even actually define torture as torture. It's called enhanced interrogation. So their legal system, the government's legal system, is just mincing words, and they're literally trying to define torture as nothing. I mean, anything you do to a human being is not torture. It's really, it is insane what our government is doing. And so I'm here to validate that you are a real TI and that this is happening to at least 2,000 people in the United States.
Wow, at least 2,000 people.
Yeah.
Now, if you can explain to the people what we're complaining about. A lot of us are complaining about not just hearing voices, but the pain. But could you explain how we're capable of hearing voices in our head that other people can't hear?
Yeah, yes, and this is very complex, and there are actually several technologies. There are at least 4 different technologies that can pipe voices into the human head that only that person will hear. But the one that is most complicated has to do with EEG heterodyning and remapping the audio cortex of the human brain that is subjected to it. But to feel physical pain, it's, again, a mapping, a cloning, if you will, of another person's brainwaves onto yours. And people want to know the details, and I can't get into the details. Biophysics and physics, you know, kind of bores people, you know, the mathematics of it. But you asked a good question. So they can control my emotions.
Yes.
How do they do that? Well, if you put a person under a functional MRI, which most people know about that technology, you can see the points of the brain that light up and classify each emotional state. You can tell that person is an alcoholic, or that person is schizophrenic, or that person feels pleasure or pain, happiness, sadness, and etc. throughout all the emotions. Now, what people don't know is you can induce those sets, it's called an emotional signal cluster, onto other human beings. So literally copying what another person is feeling and those emotions onto you.
So are they capable of having these emotions cloned onto a computer and then inflicting decibel levels of frequency waves onto humans to make them feel these particular emotions? Because for me, I mean, there are times when I feel like, you know, I can be very strong, I can be, you know, I can be angry, I can be upset, I can be sad, I can be happy. I mean, there are times when, for instance, my ex-fiance and I, you know, when we were together, there were plenty of times when I felt these vibrations going through my body. And the next thing you know, I'm extremely angry. I mean, we're fighting. I mean, I'm physically fighting with her, and I have no control over what's being did to me. All I can tell her is that, look, babe, I'm sorry. You know, that wasn't me. I love you. You know, is that me feeling someone else's emotions, or have they finally figured out the perfect decibel level of frequency waves to inflict on me? And if so, where are they inflicting these frequency waves? Is it in my brain? Is it in my nervous system? Is it, you know, where do they inflict this at?
You know, it's a good question, and it's actually more complicated than you make it. You're having both natural emotions that are tied in with the unnatural emotions that they're injecting into you. And they can amplify whatever emotion you are already feeling. And so it's not as simple as saying, I'm being fully controlled, because only in certain settings can you have a complete cloning of another person's mind. Usually it's a mixture, and so it's called heterodyning, which means mixing of brain signals, not cloning. But so I can't talk about your particular situation because I don't know.
Yeah, you weren't there.
I weren't there.
And you wasn't the person who was doing it to you.
Yeah,
So
that's right. I assure you of that.
So you can't. Yeah, I understand that. So there's also the not being able to hear. Like sometimes I have conversations with people and I can't hear what you're saying. How do they just immediately shut off my hearing?
Well, they do have control of the 5 senses. Remember, your brain, your entire self of sense is derived from your input signals. And, you know, we say taste, smell, touch, hearing, eyesight, and they can control quite a bit of that. They can dampen your hearing, they can dampen your vision, make you see double vision, they can erase your memory, short-term memory, and these have been examples of what MKUltra, ultimately, the mind control programs that were exposed in the 1970s, are trying to do, is to control a human being. So they're testing these on you. You happen to be a project, and I'm sorry for that, but you are a project.
I appreciate the apology. At least one person has apologized for this. I mean, you know, I don't think I'll ever get it again from anyone else. When you speak of the forest being able to see certain things and make you see double vision, as a child, I wrote in my book how they were able to force me to see certain neural images, I guess, of like things that would be on TV. You know, how the hell are they turning my mind into a television?
Yeah, so that's called the visual workspace of the human brain. It's sort of our imagination. We can visualize stuff, and you know, some people call it the third eye, and you know, the language changes, but by mapping the visual cortex, which the human brain, most of it is dedicated to vision, they can transmit visual perception into you, which sometimes that can overpower your two eyes, and it will seem more real, like a hologram, than even what you're seeing visually. And so it's a powerful technology, and your brain only knows what the modulated signal is being piped into it. So this is how mind control works, is your brain is being modulated at each subsection, macro circuit, sub-circuit, etc., that they are sending your brain information which does not depend on our physical reality.
So what you're saying is that the brain works as like a, for everyone else who probably doesn't understand this, because for me, hey, if it didn't happen to me, I possibly wouldn't understand this either. So the brain is kind of like a circuit board, and these people have found a way. When we say these people or they, we're referring to whoever's in control of satellite-directed energy weaponry technology. Am I correct?
I'm a little hesitant saying it's all satellite-based.
Really?
And the reason I say that is, you know, HARP was built in 1991. It's a phased array. It has a lot of the capabilities. There are at least 20 of these phased arrays around the world. And the first person that I could track back, assuming it was a real TI, was 1962. And that person wrote a book. And, you know, there weren't many TIs back then, but it sounded like a real TI. We didn't have satellites back then.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're saying...
So I'm saying it's an integrated, multimodal system, and the satellites may be a backup for the ground-based systems.
So when I'm in the sky, are the ground-based systems, am I able to hear the person speaking to me through ground-based systems, even when I'm in an airplane?
Yeah, of course you would. A lot of these ground-based systems, they're called over-the-horizon radar, and it means anything below the ionospheric level, which is, you know, out there. It's, the signal will bounce off, and so it allows you to look over the Earth to the other side. And we use this to look for nuclear weapons being launched from Russia on China and such. But it allows you to look over the other side of the world, and it's like a mirror. So yes, it could get you anywhere.
So when you came aboard for these programs, which was many years ago, they were already established mind control programs, and you just came along to, you know, help with research and development, pretty much, right?
That's what it turned out to be. Yes, that's correct. I get blamed that I was the sole inventor of all this. That's a ridiculous statement.
Right.
But,
Well, I can vouch for this. I've been at TI since '83, '84.
yeah,
And Duncan
I
was
wasn't
nowhere
even
near
in school that year.
He was nowhere near that.
Yeah, but you know, I hear it on media all the time, and I kind of joke about it. Yeah. Okay. You know, Jesse Ventura, I think, said I was the sole inventor of the mastermind.
But
No, there are thousands of scientists that work on this, but the trickery that they do to us is we think we're working on the cutting edge, and that's what a scientist loves, cutting edge science. But they trick us into thinking we're doing something good for humanity, that we're not building nuclear weapons or bombs. But that's just not the truth. We've actually been involved in building something far worse than a nuclear bomb.
Yeah, and as someone who's a victim, I
You
can
know
actually,
this.
I can tell you this technology
is a torture weapon to death.
Well, not only a torture weapon, but Duncan, I mean, am I insane? Am I crazy for feeling like the technology lives within inside of me? Because it seems to me that whatever people think the soul is nothing more than frequency waves traveling through the body. And humans have found a way to perfect those frequency waves.
I can't disagree with you.
So the world, so you're trying to tell me
Your
that
very consciousness, the thing you call the soul, is information contained in the biological computing machinery of your brain. And if someone can override that, you lose your sense of soul, your sense of self.
Well, it's kind of like man versus machine. Machine always moves faster than man is capable of doing
That's right.
itself.
Technology is evolving through mankind as a separate life form, faster than we evolve biologically. So machines will rule the world. I mean, that's a given.
Or the people who control the machines.
Or the people who control the machines, but they're flawed. So their programming may be flawed. What if they had an algorithm? We're going to try to eliminate the worst people on Earth, and they have some sort of algorithm. Well, some human being had to program that. It's a flawed algorithm, and hence they may be attacking a lot of people that shouldn't be assassinated or killed. And, you know, it kind of disturbs me that, like Edward Snowden said, well, we have no more privacy. The next generation won't know privacy. Well, why is privacy important? And I'm about to do an interview with William Binney on March 10th to talk about this. Privacy is important because government is flawed. And if you get put in one of these programs and you've done nothing wrong, total innocence, then what the hell is it for? I mean, this just brings injustice to the rest of the world. So, yeah, privacy is important.
Yes, privacy is important. But when you mention these programs that people are, I guess, just forced into, these aren't programs where people are picking you up anymore, taking you to a building or somewhere like that. These are just randomly selected people, and they're being watched with satellite technology, though, right? I mean, they're being watched with it, right?
In the past, you know, the U.S. government purposely chose for a lot of their, non-consensual human experimentation programs, poor people, people that were easily discredited, and usually the black community.
Right. Like the Tuskegee experiment, for one, which was the most heinous crime. Well, until now, you know.
Until now.
Yeah, until now.
But this hasn't been revealed yet, or people don't accept it yet. This kind of no-touch torture and silent death. But yeah, I think the program has been expanded since then to include all classifications of human beings. This is worldwide. I just did an interview with a major news agency for South Korea, and they're saying it's rampant there. Russia has a huge population. China has a huge population, and these movements are getting together, and they're trying to create a large voice. Listen to us, people. Listen to us. Put down your remote control and quit watching sports. Sports doesn't matter. That's a delusion. And so they're coming together, finally in one voice, but it's a slow process. the African Americans didn't get freedom for how many years?
300,
Women
400
couldn't
years.
even
Yeah.
vote, you know.
Yeah.
So we have a long history. We wiped out the Indians, and so
Yeah.
the government has a long track record of lying to the American people, the world population.
Sure.
And so that's why we are here. We are trying to elucidate, enlighten the rest of the population, and hopefully they care. Hopefully they'll research a little bit more and say, that could happen to my child. That could be me. And they'll do something, write their senator or whatever the motive would be.
Now, Myron May, this is something that I've somewhat experienced, but I didn't write too much about this. He complained of being burned in his seat. He felt that, like his body temperature was rising. And I've only had, actually I did write about this. It happened to me once when I was actually on the train coming to California. And they're using something I believe called like ADS, the active denial system. Can you explain how it can make you feel heat burning your skin?
There are two different methods that I know about. Active denial system is a 95 gigahertz weapon system built by Raytheon, and they have a small little packaged version, but it wouldn't be battlefield ready. But they usually mount it on a large Humvee, and it can burn you, make you feel that you're on fire a kilometer and a half away from the vehicle. So that's out of shooting range. I mean, you can't even shoot back at this while you're being burned. And they call it a non-lethal weapon. But the U.S. Air Force Secretary, Michael Wynn, I believe was his name, said we must test this on the American people before we use it in the battlefield. And he was fired for that comment.
Now, excuse me, Raytheon, you can see an office. They actually have two office buildings right across the street from LAX. Before I flew to wherever I'm at today, I went past there, I actually went past there because I flew out of LAX. So these people are actually sitting, people have control of this, or people are working on this, the higher ups. They're right across from LAX, man, and they're looking at us every day. We're going to work, we're going to school, we're going wherever. A lot of people wonder, how can you be a targeted individual for so long and not get away? Well, I'll tell you this. Where's the one place that we all go at the end of the day and at the beginning of the day? We're at home. All they have to do is target us at home. Once we leave home, it's easy to follow us. They follow us to work, follow us to school, follow us wherever we're going. And when it comes to the Aaron Alexis, he worked at the Naval Yard. Now, don't get it twisted. These young men here, they weren't told to go commit these shootings. A lot of people wonder, is the government telling them to go do this? No, they aren't. We, as black people, I feel, after so many years of oppression, we don't have a problem with speaking out or acting out against something that is unnatural to us. We don't like being oppressed. Aaron Alexis went to the place where he thought they were doing this to him at, and it quite possibly could have been the Navy, or it could be the Air Force or some form of CIA. I don't know. Duncan can't even confirm that, because if you heard him earlier, he says it's like 20 different groups are all doing this. So we don't know exactly who's targeting us, but the fact that we're being targeted is the truth. We really hope that you guys will take into consideration that we all had normal lives. Aaron Alexis was an IT for the Navy. Myron May was a young man who was an assistant trial attorney. Me, myself, a lot of you might not know about me, but I made about $2 million before I was 30. And the way I did it, was through internet companies. And the way my money was taken from me was in such an unbelievable way. I would hear the voice of the person speaking to me, and they would inflict pain. And they would tell me, if you want us to make the pain stop, this is how you have to go spend your money. So what would you do? I mean, do you really think that you can deal with the pain? My threshold for pain isn't that high. I mean, do you know anyone who can possibly, go through this kind of shit?
No. They have a program called SEER that they make some of the really tough military guys go through, waterboarding, and in case they're captured and they have secrets, to try to toughen them up. But no, this is torture, and I don't care if they call it no-touch torture, whatever euphemisms the U.S. government and their legal staff have come up with. This is the greatest atrocity and crime against humanity that we have known since Hitler.
Oh my gosh. Did you guys just hear that? This is a guy who's helped develop the technology, and believe it or not, he doesn't even know how advanced the technology was before he came aboard. Am I correct with saying that?
That's right.
So, I mean, he could actually be someone who they're using as like as a figurehead, like, hey, you're the guy who we're gonna, put out into the world to let them know that this is going on, and you don't even know that we've had most of the technology developed before you were hired. With that being said, I'm not saying that we can't trust our government, but what I'm saying is we should really trust in the American people who are trying to tell you that we're being tortured. I mean, and not only is this American, Duncan's admitting that this is worldwide.
This is worldwide.
And earlier,
every country,
everyone is complaining of being a targeted individual, and this is being targeted by someone who we can't fight or see. But this is the way I described it in my book, is that this is not like a schoolyard bully that you can fight, choose to fight or run away. This is something you can't get away from. Can you kind of explain how these particular frequency waves are able to go through buildings, and like there's really isn't any, there's no protection from this?
So, that's a good question. Are there methods that you can use to cope? And some TIs have found a way to reduce a lot of the effects, but you're still being tortured. And you still have to go to work, as you said, and go home. And you're creating your own prison with any sort of defenses you come up with. What kind of frustration would this cause? Would this cause a Myron May effect, that you need your message out and make people ask questions?
Well, actually, for Myron May or someone like me in my situation, the fact that we try everything and there's no physical material that we can find that can protect us from these extreme low frequency waves, causes the stress of, I've worked all my life to have a substantial quality life. And these people are torturing me, and there isn't any help. People are telling me I'm crazy everywhere I go. They give us pills. Pills aren't helping, And my only thing is this, and this is something we'll never know, okay? We'll never know the truth of any TI who gets relief from taking pills or putting aluminum foil over their head. Is it what the TI is doing, or is it something that I know to be true? And I'll tell you this, even if he's not going to admit it for us, I'll tell you guys like this. There's only relief when the person who is torturing us allows us relief, okay? I'm not going to sit up here and try to tell you guys, hey, you know what, wrap aluminum foil over your head, go take all those pills, because in the first place, why in the hell would you have to take pills if you don't have a genetic disorder, you don't have a mental illness? So the pills that you're taking, you're killing your brain cells of what they're doing to you. And if the human brain can only go, let's say, 100 miles per hour, but this technology that people who developed it before Duncan was even, on staff, this technology goes 300 or 400 miles per hour, and they're mimicking your same brain waves, your same frequency.
Speed of light.
Speed of light?
Yeah.
Wow, the speed of light. Hey, I can't move at the speed of light. Who am I, Muhammad Ali? Let me cut the light off, see if I can hop in bed before the light's off. You know what I mean? That kind of shit. So, when TIs are searching for relief, the last thing that they want to hear is, oh man, go take these pills, go hide under a rock, go.
So the pills may not help them, and that's how they know they're a true TI.
Yes.
But sometimes you have to do that to appease the family members and friends around you.
Exactly.
They will ask you, I think you might be having a mental breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
Would you please take these pills, go see a shrink and stuff? And, I personally think you should do it to maintain your friendships and your family relationships, but they're not going to help, and that's another way you can tell if you're a true TI. I usually ask people, what are the voices telling you? And that's how I classify my research, because they use these scripts. They use the same scripts on almost all TIs, and so you can hear what they're telling the individual. Go do this, go do that, we're going to kill your family, we're going to kill you. And they just try to ramp up your terror level. And it's domestic terrorism, but it's part of trauma-based conditioning.
So, speaking of I'm glad you brought that up, as far as we're going to kill your family, we're going to do this, because in my experiences, the one time that I didn't do what they said, and guys, please don't laugh about this and don't judge me, but they tell me things like, hey, if you don't masturbate, we're going to murder your grandmother. I know it sounds crazy, man, you know, and I don't know who the hell want to see me masturbate.
I know, it's just the control. They just want to see, will you obey?
But
Will
listen,
you obey?
But listen to this. The first time, and I promise you guys this, the first time that I didn't do what I was told, I went upstairs, and my grandmother, she's in a wheelchair, she has a pacemaker, she's 82 years old. Within minutes, because I didn't masturbate, my grandmother was slumped over in a wheelchair. I have to pick her up, put her on the toilet because she feels that she's kind of constipated and she thinks that it's gas. And, you know, I know that they have something called EMPs, you know, where, they, you know, just, you know, the microwave weapons where they can...
Well, the microwave weapons can cause heart attacks, and people that have some sort of defect in their heart and can cause strokes. And this was written about by the U.S. Air Force, talking about the Russians are developing this. We're way ahead of them. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's all a scam just so they can get more money from Congress. But Dr. Fred Bell, after he did an interview with Joseph Ventura, dropped dead 24 hours later from a heart attack. And, you know, this has been written about. This is actually old news. 1970s, I found in Russian literature, talk about you can spook or scare someone to death. So it's very old technology in terms of their tactics.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry I interrupted you.
I'm sorry. I'm glad you explained that, because, you know, now people know that I'm not, you know, crazy about what they were capable of doing. So my grandmother, I picked her up off the toilet, I put her back in a wheelchair. We had to use her life alert. She actually went to the hospital, and as she's going to the hospital, I had the person speaking to me says, "I told you if you didn't masturbate, what I was going to do." So there goes the whole theory of, you know, these are idle threats. You know, now I am totally at the mercy and the control of verbal control, and this isn't being affected on me. You know, there have been times where I've been in the same room as my brother, and I've seen, you know, I've heard the person speaking to me says, you know, watch your brother hold his heart, or watch your brother hold his head, and these people are complaining of headaches, and they're also complaining of heart pain. So when I'm told to do something, if I don't do something, my family's going to be hurt. I know that this is real, even if my family doesn't know this is real. So now I'm forced to do whatever I'm told to do, and I am so grateful. I have not been told to go out and harm anyone or do anything to, you know, to someone, but there are these stupid things that they would force me to do, and. You know, Duncan, I'm glad that you were able to explain that, yes, they do have the technology that can cause heart attacks. Also, how are they capable of forcing someone not to be able to feel the muscles in their hand? I mean, I went to squeeze, you know those little things that you know, those little...
Yeah, it's stress balls.
Yeah. I went to try to squeeze one, man, and I couldn't even, my hand would not squeeze at all. Like, it just wouldn't, you know? What is that? Can you explain that?
No, that's a capability that I haven't studied in the TI group.
Can you just say?
All right, so Duncan, I have one more question for you, and this is probably one of the most important questions I'm going to have for you. Recently, you know, I've experienced something that can possibly get me murdered, and this is something that throughout the years I know they've been working on. I don't know if it took 30 years for them to finally get me, you know, to be able to do exactly what I'm about to try to explain, but forced speech. I mean, I could be literally sitting here having a conversation with you, and it's not me talking. You know, literally I am saying word for word, verbatim, not what I'm being told, but what I feel is going through me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I could be trying to tell you, Duncan, hey, do you see that cute girl over there? Next thing you know, I'm talking about the guy down the street is, you know.
Yeah, so the way you experience it would be, I guess, like Tourette's. Almost like you can't control what is coming out of your mouth, and it's not what's in your thought processes, but you're speaking somebody else's verbiage. And yes, it does take a long time for that usually to occur, because remember, your brain's been mapped out.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've mapped out your audio cortex, you're cloned with another person or a machine, and so pretty soon the brain will bypass your cerebral cortex and be able to shoot out vocabulary that you have no intention of saying. And it's, I hate to say it, it's pretty common with most TIs.
So
research.
I'm not the only TI who's
No,
complaining
not
about
even
this.
close. No, there are a lot of them. There are a lot of them. This is not new, not a new phenomenon. And in fact, that's where the term forced speech came from. Is probably back in the 80s. People in the
Wait a minute. So you're saying that they've been working on forced speech since the 80s?
Yeah.
This is 2015.
I know. So you can imagine how advanced the weapon systems have become.
Now, when it comes to all of this particular type of technology that we're talking about, as far as the capabilities of it, you're saying that this is all based on ground technology and satellite technology? I mean, it's all capable of being, you know, citizens are able to be tracked with satellite technology and they're able to be tortured and...
I don't like to talk about the specifics of the antenna arrays.
Understand. I respect that. You know, I don't like to talk about what I was forced to talk about.
Yeah.
You know, so I understand. You know, hey.
But you won't be put in prison. I mean,
hey, you know what? And I don't want you to be put in prison. I appreciate the interview today. If you guys ever want to take a look at, you know, get a good read, you can actually pick up my book only at my website right now. It's at www.schawareness.com, and it's Satellite Directed Energy Weaponry Terrorism, Illuminati Got Me. Covers so much of my life, 30 years of experiences, horrific experiences, and it also lets you know, hey, I'm a guy who's tried, and I'm not someone who's ended up in this particular part of my life because of decisions I made. These were all forced decisions that I had no choice other than to do what I was forced to do. And with that being said, you all try to enjoy your life. And if you're not going out doing everything you can, then you're wasting valuable time. And I wish I had the time that you had.
Hey, thank you, Ty, for inviting me to this interview.
Sure, no problem.
All right.
Have a good one.
You too. All right. Cut.